Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'll be going through Pei Chun Public School. This is our prelim paper 2025. So this has happened this year very recently. So over here, question 1 is really about classification of animals. So over here, you have 3 groups. You have birds, you have reptiles, and you have mammals. Pretty straightforward over here. So which characteristics is used to classify the animals? Is it their way of moving? So cannot be this, because over here both the reptiles and the mammals, they kind of move in the same way, especially the crocodiles. They walk on land. The zebra and the lion, they also walk on land, so we cannot use that. Are these the number of legs? So you can see that the birds got 2 legs each, but the snakes got no legs, so we cannot use that. Okay, we cannot use that as a way to classify things. Okay, so is it their way of reproducing? So we cannot use way of reproducing, because over here they will reproduce by eggs. In this case, right, since they reproduce the same way, they should clump in together as one single group. So way of reproducing cannot be. Okay, so it must be type of body covering. So we have feathers. Okay, then we have scale, or very specifically dry skin with scales. Then we have hair. Okay, so all 3 different groups have different body covering, so this should be the best answer of all. So number 1 is 4, no dispute. So next, let's take a look. The characteristics of 2 organisms are shown, A and B. They can reproduce. A can reproduce by spores. They can make their own food. So let's take a look. Make their own food, then mushroom is out. So 1 is straight away out. So then yes, fern reproduce by spore, make their own food. So 2 and 3 can keep. Flying plant, they don't reproduce by spores, they reproduce by seeds. So out. So we are left with 2 and 3. So let's take a look at B. They reproduce by spores, cannot make its own food, so it must be mushroom. Okay, because mushroom, they reproduce by spore, but they are not plant, they cannot make their own food. So 2 is 2. So the diagram below shows the human digestive systems. So let's label them. This is mouth, this is stomach, this is large intestine, this is small intestine. So incorrectly shows the part where digestion start and end. Okay, so over here pretty straightforward. Digestion start at mouth, end at small intestine. So W and Y. So answer is number 2. Okay, for 3 is 2. So let's move on to the next portion. Okay, the graph below shows the length of time for each stage in the life cycle of organism P and Q. So P is the white color one, Q is the black color one. Q. Let's evaluate all these 4 statements very carefully and see which one is the correct one. Okay, P was a larva stage for 10 days after the egg was hatched. So P, so was it 10? It was only 8. So only 8 days. So this is wrong. Okay, so 1 is out. So Q spent the shortest time at the pupa stage in its life cycle. How do you do this? You take a look at all the black color bar. Okay, which one is the shortest? The egg is the shortest, right? So it means that Q spent the shortest time at the egg stage in its life cycle, not the pupa stage. Okay, it should be the egg. Okay, in fact, if we want it to be correct, right, it should be spend the longest time at the pupa stage, because over here this is about 11 days, this is about 10 days. So it should be spend the longest time at the pupa stage or spend the shortest time at the egg stage. So wrong. Okay, for number 3, right, P took a shorter time to become a pupa as compared to Q. So in this case, how do we do this? We have to combine the egg and the larva stage, right? We calculate the days, then we compare the Q. We calculate the days, egg and larva stage. Okay, we calculate the days, then see whether this statement it is correct or not. So P, right, so it's about 4 days, then 8 days. So 4 plus 8, so it's about 12 days. Q, right, is about 6 plus 10, so 6 plus 10, 16 days. So P indeed took a shorter time, because it took about 12 days to become a pupa as compared to Q. So we calculate both the egg and the larva. So in this case, the answer is number 3. Okay, so let's evaluate the last one. See why is it wrong. Okay, so number 3 is correct. So Q spent a total of 3 days longer than P at the egg and the larva stage. So over here, right, 3 days longer. So in this case, right, if we take 16 minus 12, 16 minus 12, it should be 4 days longer. Okay, so this should be wrong. Okay, it should be 4 days longer. So if you calculate the total number of days between egg and larva for both P and Q, then you just minus them out accordingly. You should be able to achieve 4. Okay, so this one answer must be number 3. So number 5 is plant transport system. Okay, so diagram N and then show the direction in which substances are transported in the plant. So you can see that the stuff that is transported is actually from the leaf. Okay, the leaf go from here all the way down towards the roots. It also go up. So it's trying to tell you that something has been transported to all parts of the plant, and it started off from the leaf. So in this case, it must be food. Okay, the food has been transported to all parts of plant. Another name for food will be your sugar. Okay, another name will be your glucose. So food, sugar, glucose, in this case, right, they do mean the same thing. So over here, M is sugar, so straight away answer must be number 4. Okay, so N, let's take a look at N. So it started from roots, then it go up. Started from roots, then it goes up to different parts, including the leaf. So this must be water plus mineral salts. So answer must be number 4 again. So this is correct. Okay, so let's take a look at number 6. So the diagram below shows how blood flows in certain parts of a fish. So you have gills, heart, and body, and it started from the gills to the body first, then to the heart to the gills. This is a circulatory system of a fish. Circulatory system of a fish. So the oxygen-rich blood, right, will enter through the gills first, because the gills is the one that carry out gas exchange, right? So the blood, right, that's traveling through K, right, which will have the most oxygen. Okay? When it go through the body, right, the body will use up oxygen for respiration in order to release energy. So in this case, right, the blood that's coming out from the body, which is L, right, should have less oxygen and more carbon dioxide. Okay, more carbon dioxide. Okay, so in this case, the most oxygen rate should be K, because it's just leaving the gills. Okay, in this case, right, so it should be high in oxygen. So straight away, 1 and 3 is wrong. Okay, we left with 2 and 4. Blood in L, right, should be high in carbon dioxide, because the body would have already used up most of the oxygen for respiration to release energy. Blood leaving should have less oxygen, more carbon dioxide, as stated, as mentioned previously. So this should be number 4. So 6 is 4. Okay, so let's move on to this part. Okay, so you have cells. Okay, then you have chick cell, leaf cells, and root cells. So what divide them apart, right, is that these fall under animal cells. So then these fall under leaf cell. So the major difference between leaf and animal cell, right, is that it's always about the cell wall. So this one should be no cell wall. Okay, then this one should be cell wall. This one have G and H should have cell wall. So what will differentiate between the leaf cell and root cell is always chloroplast, because the leaf cell need to make food, it need to have chloroplast. So this one should be chloroplast. This one should be no chloroplast. Okay, so in this case, the question really asks you about what? E and H. So E will be no cell wall, H will be no chloroplast. So answer pretty straightforward. It should be 3. Okay, in this case. So okay, Ali conducted an experiment. Okay, over here with a flower on a plant. He removed 2 parts of the flower before pollination took place. Before pollination. So after some time, the flower developed into fruit. That means, right, he removed 2 parts. Okay, but he removed 2 parts of the flower, but the flower still can undergo pollination plus fertilization, and it will become your fruit. Okay, it still can do this. So they ask you which 2 parts the Ali removes. That means these are the 2 parts, right? If you remove, the flower still can pollinate and fertilize. So we label them. We have Z petals, Y is ovary, because it's labeling this part over here is ovary. W is stigma, while X is anther. Okay, for the flower to be developed into a fruit, right, the female reproductive parts must be present. So stigma, ovary must be present. So your answer should be anther and petal. So X and Z, X and Z. So the answer should be number 3. Because over here, these are the 2 parts that even if you remove the petals, the flower could be pollinated by wind. Even if you remove the anther, pollen grain for other flowers that can still be blown by the wind and transfer to the stigma of this flower. Okay, and then pollination still can take place. So with or without the anther, pollination still can take place. Okay, but without the ovary and the stigma, pollination cannot take place. Okay, so over here, which of the following statement about the human reproduction are correct? So the egg is produced in the ovary. Yes, correct. The egg is produced in the ovary. This is definitely true. The fertilized eggs develop in the ovary. Wrong. This part should be your womb. Okay, this is human reproduction system. The fertilized eggs, after they get fertilized at the fallopian tube, they will move towards the womb and then they will start to grow from. They will start to develop from there. Okay, so in this case, B is definitely wrong. B is definitely wrong. Okay, so at this case, right, once you know B is wrong, right, any option with B must be wrong. So this one must be wrong. Okay, this one must be wrong. So you are left with A, C, and C, D. Okay, and you know that A must be correct, right? So actually your answer should be 2. Okay, that means C must be a correct statement. So over here, even if you don't know C and D, actually by knowing A and B, right, you can actually do this question. Okay, so but let us evaluate C first. Fertilization takes place in the female body. That's correct. Okay, fertilization indeed take place in the female body. Specifically for human reproduction. During fertilization, many sperms fill with egg. No, only one sperm will fills with the egg. So this is wrong. So answer must be number 2. Okay. So over here we got 3 test tube where PQR was set up as shown in the diagram below, left under the sun. So we have the sun, we have the light, and we have the light shining to PQR. Which of the following describe the change in carbon dioxide, not oxygen, carbon dioxide, okay, in the water after 2 hours. So if there's for P, there's no light, this thing cannot photosynthesize, cannot carry out photosynthesis, so only respire. So they will continue to take in the dissolved oxygen in the water and produce carbon dioxide. So the carbon dioxide will increase. So 2 and 4, definitely one of them is correct. For Q, okay, Q is very tricky. We talk about it later on. For R, pretty straightforward. The snails will respire and they will produce carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide will increase. So P and R, carbon dioxide will both increase. So straight away, the answer must be number 2. Okay, so why Q is not possible to tell? Because in this case, right, there's actually 2 processes going on. The snails is carrying out respiration, while the plant is photosynthesizing, because there is light being exposed to the to the plant. So when it photosynthesizes, right, the carbon dioxide will decrease. Okay, but when the snails respire, right, the carbon dioxide will increase. So basically, we can't tell, right, which arrow is faster. That means is the increasing faster or the decreasing faster? Is the taken in of the carbon dioxide by the plant faster, or is it the snails, right, producing the carbon dioxide much faster? We don't know. We can't tell. We don't have that information. So that's why it is not possible to tell for Q. We don't know at the end, right, of the 2 hours whether the overall the amount of carbon dioxide in the tube, right, will it go up or will it go down? We're really not sure because we can't tell which process is faster, whether the rate of respiration of the snail is faster or the rate of photosynthesis of the plant is faster. We just couldn't tell. So in this case, right, this will be the main explanation. The snails has given out the snails could have given out more carbon dioxide than plants can use up, or the water plants could have taken in more carbon dioxide than the snails can give out. So in this case, the amount of dissolved carbon dioxide depends on which organism use up or give out carbon dioxide faster. There's just isn't enough information to tell this. So we can't tell we can't tell the amount of carbon dioxide after 2 hours will it increase or decrease, because it really depends on which process is taking place faster. Okay, so for 11, okay, this is on mainly on the definition of population, community and habitat. So we have a few organisms, okay, over here listed, and we have the number of organisms between this garden community. So based on the information, which of the following statement is correct? So before we go on to talk about this, right, we need to know a population, right, is a group of organisms of the same kind living and reproducing with in the same place. So we have a tadpole and a frog, they are considered one population. They are not 2, they are considered 1. A community basically just refers to many different populations living together in a particular area or habitat. In this case, the habitat is the garden. So let's evaluate this one by one. The squirrels form 3 populations. The squirrel, you have 3, doesn't mean there is 3 populations. The squirrel is just one type, one particular kind of squirrel. So it's just one population, even though you have 3 organisms. Okay, basically the squirrel have one population, but within that population you have 3 organisms in it. So 1 is wrong. Okay, 1 is wrong. Okay, so the fern and tree form two population. The tree and the fern, right? 2 and 2. Okay, it is a group because they are not singular, they are plural. So they form two populations. So 2 is correct. 2 is correct. So let us look at why 3 and 4 is wrong. There are 6 population of living organism. Okay, this is wrong, right? That means there must be less than 6 or more than 6. It cannot be 6. So we have 1 spider, we have 2 butterfly, caterpillar. We consider them as 1 because the young and the adult belong to the same population, just like the tadpole and the frog. So the squirrel is 1. For the bird as fern is also 1. So total you only have 5 populations. So 3 is out. Okay, the caterpillar and butterfly form one community. Wrong. The caterpillar and butterfly form one population. Okay, so this is why 4 is wrong. Okay, for in this case, if we can say that the whole organism or all the organism in this case form one community. Okay, that will be a correct sentences because we have many different population in this case. We have 5 population in this garden community. Okay, garden habitat. Okay, so in this case, this should be 2. Okay, so go through question 12. So study the food chain below. So we have P, Q, and R. So obviously P is the producer. Okay, it's written by Q and Q is written by R. In this case, they say that a large population of S is being introduced. S does not feed on S does not have any predator but feed on R only. So S should look like something like this in this food chain. The following took place after S was introduced. So you have a false statement A, B, C, D. Which of the following shows the correct sequence of event? So in this case, right, do you realize that this part, right, they are talking about P and Q only, and they give you the sequence of event. Look at which one start first. It's either A or C. So actually from here, right, if you can identify the first one, which one start first, you can straight away eliminate 2 answers. Okay, it's either A or C. Either of A or C will start first, right? So you take a look. As S is being introduced, okay, into this food chain, right? So S increase, R will decrease because there will be more S that will feed on R will decrease. So if you have less R, how will it affect P and Q? So if you got less R, okay, less R will feed on Q, right? So Q will start to increase. That should be the first sequence of event. So the number of Q will increase. So this is number 1. So straight away you know that 1 and 2 is out. Because it must start with C, not A. Okay, C first. So when Q increase, P will start to decrease. Because there will be more Q to feed on P. P will start to decrease. Okay, so that will be the second part. Okay, so in this case, it should be CA. Okay, since we already know that the next portion is A, right? So straight away 3 is the answer. Let's take a look at how D and B play out. So when you got P decrease, right, then there's not enough food for Q. That should be the third sequence of event. Okay, because over here less P for Q to feed on, so there is not enough food for Q, so then Q will subsequently decrease. So in this case will be D and B. So 3 should be the correct answer. So in this case, okay. So for question number 13 is on stomata. So the diagram below shows tiny opening on a leaf during the day and during the night. This tiny opening called stomata. Okay, basically stomata, the function is to allow gases, okay, plural, to enter or exit the leaf. Okay, so what are these gases? Carbon dioxide, oxygen, water vapor. So these are the 3 gases that would enter and exit the leaf through the stomata itself. So the stomata itself actually are the cells. Okay, so which of the following correctly explain how the size of stomata help in the survival of plant? How it does. So during the day it's open, during the night it's closed. So open stomata is trying to do what? Is it really to take in more sunlight or take in more carbon dioxide? Obviously it's to take in more carbon dioxide, not take in more sunlight. Take in more sunlight, this is the role of a chloroplast. Chloroplast will do the job. They trap sunlight to make food. So obviously 1 and 3 is out, so left with 2 and 4. So you left 2 and 4, right? So during the night, the stomata is closed. Is it really to give out less oxygen or less water vapor? It's to give out less water vapor. It is to reduce water loss during the night. Okay, so that's why the stomata is closed, so that there will be more water that can be retained in the leaf. So therefore, during the day they could have used the water for photosynthesis again. So this is to maintain the amount of water within the leaf itself. So answer must be number 4 in this case. Okay, so let's move on to question number 14. Okay, so Hena want to find out if the number of plants, okay, growing on the slope affect the amount of soil. Affect the number of soil washed away by rainwater. Okay, so she set up an experiment as shown below. So basically, you have the watering can that will wash the water. They will wash the water through the tray of soil that's been anchored by the plant, and then after some time, of course, some of the water will become some of the water that be washed away will be slightly become muddy because they will carry the soil along with them. Okay, this is called your soil erosion. Okay, over here, soil erosion, they can be done by wind or water. Okay, so she pours some water onto the tray, waited for the water to flow down the container, repeat the experiment with 2 other tray of soil. So these 2 other tray of soil would have different number of plants because this is your change variable. They will have different number of plants. Okay, so in this case, which of the following should be kept constant for fair test? So basically, this question is identify fixed variable that should be remain fixed so that it will not affect the measured variable or the result of the experiment, because we want the result to be only affected by the number of plants, not other variable. So the measured variable in this case, right, is given the amount of soil washed by the rainwater. So obviously, you take a look at these few statements. Okay, type of soil, yes, that one must be keep constant, because if you don't keep it constant, this might affect the amount of soil that is being washed by the rainwater. Because in this case, different soil might be washed away very differently, by the water that is washing them away, and this could have affected it. So you want the type of soil to be the same. Okay, so this one A is correct. So if A is correct, right, so the only answer can be 1, 2, or 4. So 3 eliminated. Okay, 3 eliminated. Okay, so the number of plants in the tray, this one definitely have to be changed. This is your change variable though. This is the one that you're testing, so it cannot be the same. If it's the same, then the result will be the same. Then you cannot check, you cannot find out this really. Okay, so B is wrong. So if B is wrong, 1 is out. So you by this way of eliminating, you only left with 2 and 4. Okay, so the amount of water pour onto the tray, yes, this must be kept constant. Okay, if you have different amount of water pour onto the tray, right, then the one with more water would have wash more soil away, okay, because there is more there will be more erosion going on. So in this case, the amount of water should be kept the same. It should be a fixed variable. So C is correct. Fixed variable. Okay, so the last one, the amount of soil collected in the container. This cannot be the same. Cannot be the same. Okay, cannot be the same. Why it cannot be the same? Because this is your result. If your result is the same, then you cannot really check out this whether the number of plants will affect the amount of soil being washed by the rainwater. Okay, can you see this part? They're exactly the same statement. Amount of soil collected. Okay, amount of soil collected in the container is actually represented by the amount of soil washed by the rainwater. Maybe I should use blue color. These are the same. Okay, this represent the same variable. Okay, so D cannot be kept the same because it's your result. So to answer only A and C, so it should be number 2. Okay, 14 is 2. Okay, let's move on to 15. Okay, at the start of 15, right, you'll realize that this part over here, right, from here onwards will be your physical science. Okay, any science got to do with non-living thing. Okay, things like energy, matter, forces, from 15 onwards. So the first 14 always life science, 15 onwards physical science. Okay, so study a flowchart below. So we have a flowchart. Okay, so we got materials, then we got yes and no to good conductor of heat, then flexible, yes and no, then waterproof. So we have a few properties. The properties has been listed here. Properties. Okay, these are the properties of the material that has been given to us. So which of these material is the most suitable to make the base as well as the handle? So the base over here is the base over here should be a good conductor of heat, because it must gain heat very fast to heat up very fast so that it can iron your clothes. Basically over here this is iron. Okay, so this one must be a good conductor of heat. GCOH, good conductor of heat. Okay, and then for the handle, right, should it be a good conductor of heat? Okay, it should be a poor conductor of heat, because if it's good conductor of heat, right, your hand over here, okay, your hand over here, when you're touching this, right, it will feel very hot to the touch. Then you cannot even handle the iron. Okay, then with that, you cannot handle the iron. Of course, you cannot use the iron anymore. So it should be a poor conductor of heat. Then while the base should be a good conductor of heat. So now let's talk about the base first. So the base, so if you were to go down this path, okay, the base with red color, it should be yes. Okay, should it be waterproof? It should be waterproof. It should not clog water. It should be waterproof in this case. So in this case, it should be A. Okay, it should be A. It should be waterproof, because if it's not waterproof, then when you're spraying the water on the clothes, right, then the water might have gone into the iron, then have gone to the base, and then it might affect the it might affect the electrical component inside. Okay, because in this case, right, we don't want the water to be absorbed by the base. Okay, because we don't want the water to get into the electrical circuit. So in this case, the most reasonable part is A. Okay, A should be your correct choice for the base. So you only left with 1 and 2. So for the handle, let me use blue color. The handle over here, we should be a poor conductor of heat. So we go down. So should it be flexible or inflexible? It should be inflexible. So it should be no. It should be inflexible. So it should be no. So the answer must be number 2, which is A and D. Okay, the handle is flexible. It's very difficult for you to handle it. Okay, that's why you will choose something that is inflexible or very stiff in this case, so that it's easier for you to hold it, so that it will not bend easily. Okay, you want the handle to not bend easily, so that you can handle it more easily. Okay, so the answer should be number 2 for this part. Okay, so let's move on to question number 16. Question number 16, right, is really about magnet. Okay, so the diagram below shows the bar magnet and 2 unknown objects. Okay, so we take a look. Each pole of the bar magnet is brought near to W, X, Y, and Z. So basically these 4 ends over here of D and E. Okay, so the observation is being recorded. So if you bring north and south, right, towards W and X, right, everything attract. That means put here attract, you put here attract, you put here attract, you put here also attract. So what does it say about D? D does not show repulsion, it only shows attraction. Straight away, D is a magnetic material. Must be a magnetic material. Based on this set of information, D is magnetic material. Okay, so over here, E, they show repel. So when N is brought near Y, this one show repulsion. So straight away you know that Y is North Pole. Y is North Pole. So in this case, for S, when it's brought near to Z, it show repulsion again. S brought near to Z, it show repulsion. So straight away you know that Z is South Pole. Okay, so straight away this one must be a magnet. Now you already know the identity. One magnet, one magnetic material. So you just evaluate the statement accordingly. Okay, so in this case, which of the following is correct? D is a magnet. No, D is a magnetic material. Okay, D is not a magnet. Okay, a magnet and a magnetic material, they are different. Okay, a magnet means it has already got poles. A magnetic material, no poles at all, but it can be attracted by magnet. Okay, so one is wrong. Both D and E are magnet. Straight away wrong. One is magnet, one is magnetic material. Okay, so straight away wrong. So NY of E will repel NX of D. Okay, so they are talking about E will repel D. Okay, this one over here will repel NX, so they will repel this. You know straight away it's wrong, because you already know that D is a magnetic material. So you bring a magnet near a magnetic material, no matter what, it will always attract at both ends. Okay, because the magnetic material doesn't have a pole to begin with. So straight away 3 is wrong. If 3 is wrong, 4 must be the correct answer. But let's take a look why is 4 is the correct answer. Both D and E are made out of magnetic material. Yes. Okay. D conform magnetic material. It could be iron, steel, nickel, or cobalt. Okay. Magnet must be made out of magnetic material. All magnets are made out of magnetic material. So in this case, E will be E is made out of magnetic material, but it has been magnetized into a magnet. So there's a difference between these two statements. They are magnetic material and they are magnet. Okay, if we say that it is a magnetic material only, that means that it has not been magnetized. It don't have pole, but it has the possibility of it being magnetized if you have another magnet to stroke it. So we are saying that D has not been magnetized. It is still a magnetic material, but E, right, is made out of magnetic material, but it has been magnetized already. Already has been magnetized, so it's past tense. So that's why E in this case, right, definitely is made out of magnetic material. Okay, all magnets are made out of magnetic material. So this is kind of like a rule that you need to remember. So okay, so 16 is number 4. So two magnets G and H are placed near each other as shown. So we got G and H. So we see that both north pole are facing each other. So they are light poles. They are light poles. In this case, the direction of repulsion should be in this way. Okay, both G and H will move away from each other in this direction. Okay, left and right. Okay, when G was released, it moved along the surface. Okay, G was released, it moved along the surface. That means G must have moved in this direction. Okay, which of the following directions show the direction of the frictional force acting on G? Okay, and the direction of magnetic force acting on H. So we have to be very careful about the wording over here. Frictional force G, frictional force G, magnetic force H. Okay, so let's solve about G first. Okay, let's solve about H first, because it's easier to talk about the magnetic force rather than the frictional force. Okay, the magnetic force on H, right, should be in this direction. Okay, because they move away from each other, right? So this direction confirm correct. So 2 is out, 4 is out, 2 and 4 is out. Okay, out. Okay, so then you take a look at this. Number 1, they are completely opposite of each other. So the direction, they are completely opposite of each other. So you take a look at this statement. Frictional force always opposes motion. That means if motion is this way, frictional force must be the other way around. It must be in this direction. Okay, that the frictional force is between the table and G. Okay, so let me put it very clear cut for this part. This is the direction of magnetic force of repulsion. Okay, magnetic force of repulsion. Okay, maybe I write it in a clearer manner. Okay, magnetic force of repulsion. Okay, this is the frictional force. It is completely opposite of the completely in the opposite direction of the motion, because this represents the motion. Okay, this motion is due to the magnetic force of repulsion. So friction always opposes motion, so it must act against the magnetic force of repulsion. So in the completely opposite direction of motion, okay, or the intended motion. Okay, so this is frictional force. So I will always represent it in a smaller f. Okay, frictional force. So in this case, frictional force should be in this direction, towards the right. So it should be this. Okay, so the magnetic force. So in this case, it is very tricky. You can see that the magnetic force acting on H and the frictional force acting on G, they are in the same direction. So this is answer number 1. Okay, this is a very tricky question because you need to know what is the motion. From the motion, you decide where is the direction of friction. So let me recap. So if the motion is this way, friction is going this way, because friction always opposes motion. So if the motion is this way, okay, friction goes this way, opposite of motion. So this is like a key to find out where is the frictional force, or what is the direction of the frictional force between the object and the sliding surface. Okay, so this part should be pretty clear cut. Okay, so let's go on to question number 18. So question number 18 for this case, right, is talking about air. Okay, the concept is really air has no definite volume and it will expand to fill out the remaining space in this case. Okay, so so the diagram below shows a sealed container. So it contains about 150 ml, 100 centimeter cube of water together with 300. So the total, right, the total over here is 500 centimeter cube of empty space, or the space in the container is 500 centimeter cube. Okay, so it's connected to an air pump, connected to a tap. So 50 centimeter cube of water was removed. Okay, so you minus away 50. So the amount of water remaining should be about 100 centimeter cube of water. Okay, so another 100 centimeter cube of air is being pumped to the container. So this is the part that is usually the most tricky. Okay, this part you will ignore it. Okay, you don't care about this 100. Okay, you only care about what is the empty space in the container. The empty space of the container will represent the volume of air in the container, because air itself got no definite volume. So in this case, how do you work out this question? Is that you find out the volume of air, that is by taking the total volume of the container and subtracting the volume of the water only. Okay, take the total volume of the container, which is 500, you just subtract the 100, you will get the volume of air inside. So this will represent the amount of empty space in the container that is taken up by the air. Okay, so the amount of air that is pumped in the container will not affect the final volume, because the air itself, even if you pump in more or you remove some, right, the remaining air will just fill up the entire space, okay, of the container, and that is how we calculate the volume of air in the container, because air itself got no definite volume. Okay, and it can be compressed, or it can be expanded to fill out any remaining space. Okay, so it will expand to fill out the remaining space, or it can be compressed. Okay, compressed to a smaller volume. Okay, so in this case, you might think that if you add the 100, right, it will become 500. No, it does not work that way. So how do you do the calculation? Total volume of water minus total volume of water, which is 100. You just do the math accordingly. Then the amount of empty space, 500 minus 100 is 400. So the 400 will be the correct answer. Okay, so this one will be no dispute. It must be number 3. It must be number 3. Okay, in this case, yeah, for this part. Okay, so with that, let's move on to question number 19. Okay, so over here the diagram below shows the plastic ball before and after. Before and after is being dent. So this one is before there's no dent. After that, someone push it and there's a dent over here. So which of the following correctly describe the change in mass and change in volume of the air inside the plastic ball? Okay, so you have to ask yourself, when you put when you push it, right, you dent the ping pong ball, or you dent the plastic ball in this case, right, do you add more air, or was any air removed from the plastic ball? The answer is no. If there is no change in matter, no change in mass. Okay, over here, this one, there is no change in the amount of matter, so no change in mass. So the answer is no for 2. Okay, the answer must be no. Okay, for 1 and so 1 and 2 could be the correct answer. So the volume of air. So the volume of air is really the amount of space occupied by the air, or the air that is within the ping pong ball. So you can see that originally the air in the ping pong ball took out this amount of space, right? Then after that it become this amount of space. So if I were to shift it, okay, if I were to do it more accurately, okay, if I were to do it more accurately, then I shift it over here. Do you realize the amount of space actually decreases? Okay, the amount of space indeed decreases. Okay, because this part of the space is no longer taken up by the air in the ping pong ball. Okay, so in this case, the volume of air must have decreases, because it occupies less space now. Okay, so in this case, it must have decreased because it occupies less space. So in this case, the answer must be number 1. Okay, the volume does change because we only calculate the amount of space the object occupies. Okay, indeed, because of the dent, it occupies less space, so the volume should have decreased. So 19 confirm is number 1. Okay, question number 20. Xuanru have 3 sheets of different material with different shape cut in the middle. Only one sheet is made of material that allowed light to pass through. That means one of the sheet, right, with the cutout, right, the whole thing is transparent. Okay, so in this case, you have 3 sheets R, S, and T, they have in this case they are made of different material. She conduct experiment in a dark room. They ask you what will be seen on the screen. So basically this experiment, right, is hard for you to visualize in this setup. Okay, but the concept is that if the object is nearer, it will block more light, right? So imagine you have a light that is shining over here. Okay, so only if this is opaque, if everything is opaque first, then the light will only pass through the triangle. So what you see there is that there will be a triangle over here, and then over here, right, only the light in the square, right, will pass through on the next part. So only here will appear as a square. So here will appear as a square, right, and it will be blocked by this material over here. Okay, because if everything is opaque, right, then this part will be able to block light, right. So what you see, right, will always be a circle, okay, on the screen if everything is opaque. So I have more or less done this experiment before. So let me show it to you how this works. So over here we have a light source. Okay, so if I have two opaque material, right, so this part over here will block light. So only the light, right, from the triangle cutout, right, will be passed on to the next sheet of paper. Then over here, right, because this part also block light, only the light from the circle will be shown on the screen. Okay, so over here end up you will have a shape of a circle. So the most important thing is you look at the position. Okay, the first position, right, will not be the shape that will appear on the screen. It is always the last position. So the answer is always the last position. You look at the last one if indeed it is opaque. But if let's say I have a transparent, okay, if let's say I have a transparent material over here, right, and the cutout is, let's say, a square, then this one does not matter, because the light will be passed, the light from the circle, right, will pass through entirely through the transparent sheet of paper to cast it as a circle. So the transparent, right, if the material if the material is transparent, right, you can ignore the shape of the cutout in this case. So over here the last position is what matters most to be able to find out the shape. So having said that, right, so this question is more or less adapted from your 2017 PSLE paper, question number 27. So I have one over here below. Okay, so same idea, same word, it's just that the name is different. Previously was Xian Ru, now is Pei Chun. Okay, but you can see that the shape, they are organized very differently. So let me use this as an example to reinforce the idea of question number 20. So if everything is opaque, so now before you look into this question, we have circle first, triangle, and the square. If everything is opaque, right, the square will be shown on the screen. So the result is a square. The result is a square. Okay, right? If everything is opaque, the result is a square. Opaque, then you only have a square. Because the idea is that the light over here, it will cast a circle, then only the triangle will be reflected over here, alright? So you will have a triangle, then because this part still block light, right? So end up you will still have a square, okay, over here. But can you see that over here, right, there's no square? Okay, if everything is opaque, right, there's still no square. So in this case, right, it seems that it's trying to tell you that the square, right, is the one that allowed light to pass through. Okay, so if we can continue to evaluate one by one. Okay, so we can go on to talk about if one of them is transparent, because one of them should allow light to pass through. So we can evaluate one by one. So in the next scenario, we have, let's say, if the circle is transparent, this is opaque, okay, opaque, right? Then you will still have the square. The result is still the square, because you look at the last position when the material is opaque. That will be the answer, okay, on this part. Okay? So, but you still don't see a square. So square cannot be the answer. So over here, if the scenario, the third scenario is that this part here is opaque, this part here is transparent, this part here is opaque, so the triangle is transparent, right? You will still see a square, okay, because the last position of the opaque material is still a square cutout. So you will still see a square, but you don't see a square, so square cannot be the answer. So in this case, the fourth scenario is that the last one is transparent, the triangle is opaque. So what will you see? If the last one is transparent, right, you don't see this anymore. You don't see the square anymore. Okay, then you will only see the triangle. So in this case, can you see that the answer is over here for this question is triangle? Okay, in this case, because the last material is indeed transparent. That's why you will only see a triangle on the screen itself. So if we will go back, we use the same method Okay, to apply it on the question number 20, right? Pei Chun question number 20. So we take a look at this. We can assume that if everything is opaque first, opaque, then what will be the answer? The answer must be the last one, because that will be the sheet that is furthest away from the light source, and it is opaque. Okay, so we take it that the circle is the answer. So in this case, if everything is opaque, then circle is the answer. So for scenario number 2 is a bit different. Okay, so now we assume that this is transparent, the other two is opaque. Okay, same thing, we still look at the last opaque material. So it is still a circle, so the circle is still the answer. The last opaque material will always be the answer. Okay. Okay, so in this case, right, since we already know that the second scenario, which is something that is applicable to the question, right, it already gives us the answer that it is circle, right, then most likely 2 is the answer. But let us continue work it through, because we don't know which one is transparent. Okay, let's say we work it out. Number 3, right, this one is transparent, this one is opaque, then the circle is still opaque, right? So the last opaque material is still a circle, so the circle is still the answer. Okay, so in scenario 2 and 3, right, the circle is still the answer. Okay, so for this part, so let's take a look at number 3. If the circle is transparent, then the square is opaque. Now, the last opaque material is actually the square, because the transparent we can't ignore it. We ignore the shape cut out. Then you will see a square. But can you see any square in the answer? You don't see any square in the answer. So the square cannot be the one that is the square scenario, right, which is number 4, right, cannot be the one that is reflected in this question, because we don't see a square in the answer. Okay, so in this case, right, based on whatever answer that has been posted out, right, 2 is the best answer to explain this scenario based on the three possible scenario that has been given to us. So in this case, this is how you could have done this question. It's indeed quite a difficult question. Okay, so let me just zoom out so that you can see very clearly, including the setup. Okay, John poured different amount of hot water into 2 identical beaker A and B. So he placed 2 identical ice cubes, okay, into the beaker as shown. Record the time taken for each ice cube to melt completely. That means until he cannot see ice cube. Okay, anymore. Cannot see the ice cube anymore. So you take a look at this setup. So A and B, the temperature is the same, only the volume of water are different. So in this case, right, we could safely assume that this one should have more heat. Okay, because it has more water and they are at the same temperature. So temperature we don't really care, we don't really need to compare that anymore. But we know that based on the volume of water, A got more heat. Okay, so in this case, the heat will most likely transfer to the ice cube to melt them, right? So but because beaker A got more heat, so more heat can be transferred in the same period of time to the ice cube, and probably that the ice cube would have melt faster. So we take a look at the observation first. The ice in beaker A took a shorter time to melt completely. This one confirm is correct. Okay, so 1 and 2 is the confirm correct answer, because it's the actual observation that you observe. Okay, when they take a shorter time means they melt faster. Okay, shorter time, okay, melt faster. Okay, in this case, so 1 and 2 must be correct. So 3 and 4 definitely wrong. The ice in beaker B took a shorter time. This one confirm. B must take a longer time because it has less heat. Okay, the ice in both beaker took the same amount. This one also confirm wrong. So 3 and 4 wrong. So let's take a look at the reasons. Okay, the water in beaker A has more heat. Okay, this is what we have explained earlier. Okay, so 1 is correct answer. So why 2 is wrong? Okay, the water in the beaker A gain more heat from the surrounding. Actually, this is wrong, because the water at 60 degrees is actually quite hot. So it should be, if this is placed in a room, right, so the water should have lose heat to the surrounding. Okay, so basically the reason for number 2 doesn't make sense. So this should be the correct answer, 1. Okay, so let's move on to 22. 22 is about melting point, boiling point. So M is a solid at 60 degrees, while at gas at 180 degrees. So you are being tasked to find out the melting point and boiling point. So one straight answer is that if M is a solid at 60 degrees, right, so the melting point must be higher than 60. This is a very quick way to answer this. So higher than 60, so what will be the answer? 3 or 4. Okay, if it's M is a gas at 180 degrees, right, 180 degrees, right, that means the boiling point must be lower than 180 degrees, because at 180 180 degrees already boil. So the boiling point must be way lower. So which one is lower than 180? Okay, definitely answer is number 3. So 3 should be the correct answer. Okay, for 3 should be the correct answer. So sorry, 3 should be the correct answer. Okay, in this case. Okay, so if you want to put them as a temperature line to check that against, to check. So this is what we call a number line or temperature line. So basically the smallest number over here and the largest number over here. Okay, so if you can't visually this if you can't visualize this statement or cannot think of ways to actually find out why this statement is correct, right? You can use a number line. So at 70 degrees, which is the boiling which is the melting point, okay, then you put 120 degrees as the boiling point, okay, in this case, right? Then any number that fall into this zone, right, this zone over here, right, will be a solid. Any number that fall into this zone over here will be a liquid. Any number that fall into this zone over here, right, will be a gas. So this is one way you can check back your answer whether is it correct or not. Okay, so you take a look at this. So if I were to fill in the numbers, okay, fill in the numbers right now, 60 degrees, right? 60 degrees over here, correct? 60 degrees fall into the red color area because it's less than 70, so it should be a solid. So 180 degrees, right, fall into somewhere in this area. 180 degrees, so it fall into the green area, it should be a gas. So this set of melting and boiling point that you chosen, right, indeed did reflect the what is indeed did reflect the statement over here. So 3 must be a correct answer. But if you try it with 4, right, you cannot fit, okay, because at 180 degrees, right, at 180 degrees, M will be a liquid. So if in this case, if you choose 250, therefore this statement becomes false. It does not fit into the scenario. So that's why 4 cannot be the answer. Okay, so with that, let's move on to question number 23. So Aiden kicked a ball upward. The ball went from E to F, then to G. So it's moving upwards. In this case, it's moving upwards. So which of the statement is not correct? Not correct. Okay, so that means, like, correct, don't select. Okay, don't select. Incorrect, you select. Okay, so this is, you have to keep in mind what should you choose and what should you not choose. That means out of these 4 statements, 3 of them is correct, 1 of them is incorrect. Okay, so a force is pushing the ball up at F. A force is pushing the ball up at F. This is not correct because over here, right, why this is incorrect, right? Because the force that is pushing it up is actually at E, and the legs is no longer in contact with the ball at F, right? That's why the force is no longer pushing the ball up at F. It's no longer. Okay? There isn't a force at F that is pushing the ball up. Okay, so straight away, 1 is wrong, 1 is the correct answer because 1 is incorrect. Incorrect, you select them. Okay, so this kind of negative question, you really have to look at it very carefully. So a force is pulling the ball down at F. Yes, okay, this force is called your gravity. So 2 is correct. So the ball slows down from F to G due to its weight. F to G, it slows down, correct. Okay, the gravity will be pulling it down. So the speed of the ball will slowly decreases. So 3 is correct. Okay, the gravitational force acting on the ball remain the same as it move from F to G. Correct. Okay, because why? The height of an object above ground does not affect the gravitational force acting on the object. Okay, so this is the key rule. Okay, the height of an object above ground does not affect the gravitational force acting on an object. What affect? Only the mass affect. Okay, more mass, more gravitational force acting on it. The second one is the location. Okay, so what does it mean by location? Does it mean that Sengkang versus Choa Chu Kang? No, the location, whether you are Sengkang and Choa Chu Kang, the gravitational force acting on you remain the same. The location that I'm referring to is Earth versus Moon. Okay, we are talking about the whole planet. I'm not talking about the geographical location on the planet. I'm talking about the planet itself. Okay, if you are at Earth and you are at Moon, the amount of gravitational force acting on you will be different, even though you have the same mass. Okay, so in this case, you need to be very clear. So most of the time, we only assess you on mass lah. Okay, location is a bit too far-fetched. Usually, most of the question we will talk. We will set the context that it is already happening on Earth. We will not say that it's on Moon unless it's being stated in the question. So you can worry more about number 1 as compared to number 2. So in this case, 1 must be the correct answer. Okay. So 24. Mandy set up 2 electrical circuit using identical batteries and light bulb. All the batteries and light bulb are working correctly. Okay. So which of the following is correct about the brightness of the bulb? So you have to find the dimmest versus the brightest. Okay. So in this case, we have 2 parallel circuit. The number of batteries are different. Let's work the math out. Okay, this one you can assume. Okay, so I'll assume that each battery to be 2 units of power. Okay, so this is 2 units. This is 4 units because we have 4 batteries. So the electricity that's going to flow through here will be shared by the 2 units of power from the battery because they are in F and G are in series. So in this case, right, to work it simply, 1 unit, 1 unit. Okay, this is what most of your schools has been telling you, or this is one way that you can work on it. So in this case, F and G will share the electrical current in green. Okay, so let me use another color. So there's another electricity going through in the blue color. So now the electricity going through the blue color is also 2 units because it's in parallel. Okay, so in this case, only one light bulb is using the blue color, right? Okay, only H is using the blue color, so this will be 2 units. So over here, you got 2 units of brightness, 1 unit of brightness for F and G each. So now we work the same idea. Okay, so we use different colors now. Okay, we use maybe red. Okay, so electricity is flowing through here, right? Okay, red. Electricity is flowing through here. Okay, so only W is using 4 units of power from the 2 batteries over here. So W is 4 units. Okay, so X and Y, right? So let's put it this way. Okay, this color is a bit off. Okay, maybe I put it maybe I put it green color. This green. Okay, this purple color. Okay, over here the purple color, right? Can you see that X and Y are connected in series and is using the electricity from 2 batteries. So each battery, okay, or each bulb, each bulb will get 2 units of power. 2 units of power. X and Y will get 2 units of power. So now you have it. You have all the numbers. It's easy for you to compare. 1, 2, and 4. Okay, you have 1, 2, and 4. So which one is the brightest? 4. Which one is 4? W, right? So in this case, W will be the brightest. So the dimmest is which one? Dimmest is of course the 1. Which one is the 1? F and G. F and G. So in this case, number 2 will be the correct answer. So this one, no dispute. Number 2 is the correct answer for this part. Okay, question number 25. Eugene had 4 pieces of paper of the same size. He folded each piece of paper very differently. So then he dropped them from the same height. Measure how long it took each piece to fall to the ground. So these are the results that is being shown. We got this experiment, K all the way to L. Mass of paper is the change variable or the first change variable. Okay, then you got the second change variable, which is the type of fold. Okay, then the measure variable is the time taken for the paper to reach the ground. So which 2 experiments support the hypothesis? Okay, so this is the hypothesis. The bigger the surface area, the longer the time it takes to fall to the ground. So in this case, right, if you want to look at this hypothesis, right, you choose a set of experiment. First is that surface area must be changed. The mass must be the same. While the results, okay, the result it shows that the larger one, it should have a longer time. The smaller one should have a shorter time. Okay, so these are the 3 things that you should keep in mind. So let's take a look at K and L. K and L. So the mass of paper different, so straight away wrong. Okay, K and L straight away wrong because mass of paper is different. So K and N. So mass of the paper different, straight away wrong. You don't even need to compare. Okay, L and M. Okay, so the mass of the paper is also different, so straight away don't need to compare. So the answer must be number 4. But let's take a look at why number 4 is the answer. Okay, so over here L and N. So the mass of the paper, they are the same. So they are folded very differently. So obviously L have a larger surface area, longer time. N has a smaller surface area, shorter time. So indeed, this set of results does support the hypothesis. So number 4 is the correct answer, L and N. Okay, so in this case, let's move on. So you got 4. Question number 26. 4 paperclip P to S will fix on a piece of cardboard as shown in figure 1. Figure 2 shows you the battery and the light bulb. So over here, you are supposed to use the 2 wire and then connect to the different sides of to the different paper clip, which is labeled from P, Q, R, and S, and then see whether the light bulb light up or not. Okay, in this case. Okay, so Sally connected some but not all of the paper clip on the cardboard with in figure 1 with the wire. She then connect X and Y across different pairs of paper clip in turn. She record the result over here. Okay, so over here the objective is to look at the yes. Okay, and then you decide what is the connection made by Sally. Okay, so in this case, right? So let me just zoom it out. So let's take a look at the yes first. Okay, yes, P and S light bulb light up. So that means there must be a line from P to S. Okay, so that means when I connect here and then when I connect here, the light bulb indeed did light up. Okay, so there is a connection between P and S. There's a connection between R and S. Okay, so you then after that you take a look at this, right? That means the connection is from P, S, and R. So you take a look. Which one is the correct answer? Okay, any connection with Q, right, straight away is wrong because Q should be nothing connected with it. So because if you check anything that is connected to Q, okay, the answer is no. Okay, so the means Q is not connected to R and S in this case. So so based on this, right, Q should be the one without wire. So straight away 1 is wrong because Q has wire. Could it be 2? Okay, P S, P, and R. Okay, it could be because Q is empty. Okay, so in this case, right, okay, for 3, okay, Q, there's some wire connected between Q and R. So in this case, right, this is the false statement because Q and R, they are not connected. The light bulb did not light up, so 3 is wrong. So can you see Q is connected to P and S, so straight away wrong. So the answer should be number 2. Okay, because Q should be have left empty. Okay, the connection could be in this manner, or it could be in this manner. Okay, or it could also be in this manner. Either way will be fine. Okay, as long as P, S, and R they are connected and Q is left empty, that will be the answer. Okay, okay. So with that, let's move on to question number 27. So in question number 27, the diagram shows a round glass ball. A was held at X. So in this case, I can say that it's not moving. It was held at X, not moving. When it was released, it rolled to Y, then back to Z, then before rolling back. Okay, so in this case, which of the following graph correctly shows the different type of energy of the ball at X and Y? So at X and Y. So what would be the forms of energy? So you take a look at this. So the ball is at the highest height, while at Y, right, is at the lowest height. So I'm just going to compare the this side, okay, the touching the ball at this height. Okay, I'm just going to compare from here and here. Okay, so in this case, right, since the ball at X is not moving and is at the highest height, right, so X would only have potential energy. X would only have potential energy. It will not have kinetic energy in this case. So any indication that X has kinetic energy, right, straight away is wrong. So 3 and 4 is wrong. So only left with 1 and 2. Okay? Because X metal ball was held at X, it means not moving, no kinetic energy. Okay? Not moving means no kinetic energy. Okay, so in this case, this should be the correct one. Okay, so when it rolls down from X to Y, right, some of the GPE has been converted to other forms of energy. But does it still have GPE? It does have, because it's still some height above ground. It's still some height above ground. So there will be some GPE or some potential energy. There will be kinetic energy. There will be kinetic energy. There will also be heat energy because due to the friction. This is due to the friction between the ball and the round glass ball. Okay, but the total amount of energy should remain the same. That means, right, whatever the ball has initially, okay, it will be converted to the same amount. Okay, because you did not add additional energy into the ball. Okay, or the ball did not have any way to possess any additional energy. So in this case, right, Okay, 2 must be the correct answer. Okay, this one shows that there's extra energy which is input into the ball, which is not correct. Okay, because energy can neither be created nor destroyed. This suggests that some energy has been created, okay, by the ball on its own. Okay, this suggests that the ball has created some energy, which is incorrect, not true. Okay, so based on this, 2 is the best answer in this case. Okay, so let's go back to number 28. Okay, number 28 shows a hydroelectric power station. So which of the following best describe the energy changes that take place from the reservoir to the turbine to the power line? So in the reservoir, the water is of a great height. Okay, so it must possess gravitational potential energy at first. Okay, because the water is of a great height above the ground. So in this case, 1 and 2 straight away is wrong. Okay, 1 and 2 is straight away wrong. So we would not there's no battery involved, so there's no potential energy, chemical potential energy in this case. So it must be energy possessed by an object due to its height above ground. So it must be QPE at first. So either 3 or 4 could be the correct answer. So now we talk about the turbine. So when the moving water move down and turn the turbine, right, the turbine would have turned and it would have possessed kinetic energy. So in this case, this should be the correct answer. It should be kinetic energy. Then in the power lines itself, it will be electrical energy. Because over here is reservoir, turbine, power lines. So in this case, this should be the correct one. So if I were to put, right, this is the object which the energy possess. Okay, reservoir, turbine, and power lines. Okay, so the answer is number 4. Okay, so with that, we are more or less done with the MCQ. So now let's move on to the open-ended. Now we are moving to the booklet B. So this is Pei Chun prelim paper for 2025. So let's take a look. So this topic is on digestion. So basically the graph below shows the amount of undigested food leaving each organ of the digestive system after a meal. So this is not entering, this is leaving. That means they are measuring the amount of undigested food leaving each organ from the mouth all the way to the large intestine. Then they ask you use a pencil, complete the bar graph above by shading the bar for the large intestine to show the amount of undigested food leaving. So we are talking about the amount of undigested food leaving the large intestine. Okay, so before you go on to talk about this one, you need to know where digestion happened. It happened at the mouth. It starts from here. It all the way ends at here. Okay, so after this, there is no digestion anymore. Okay, digestion ends at small intestine. Of course, the gullet, there is also no digestion. Okay, it is just a pathway for it to transport food from the mouth to the stomach. Okay, so in this case, right, how do we actually do it? So to be able to know the amount of undigested food, right, we go back to take a look at the small intestine because it came from the small intestine, right? So since the small intestine, since the digestion ends at small intestine, right, whatever digested food that is passed on to large intestine, it's not going to be digested. So if there is only 5 units of undigested food that is leaving the small intestine, you will end up 5 units of undigested food entering. Okay, so during this process, right, when 5 units of undigested food entering the large intestine, right, when it's leaving that time, it will still end with 5. Okay, so it will still be the same. Okay, so the clue over here in this case is your small intestine. So whatever bar that you draw for the small intestine, right, it should reflect in the large intestine. So it should be the same bar at the same height. Okay, so in this case, to recap this part is because digestion does not take place in large intestine. So the amount of undigested food entering and leaving large intestine should remain unchanged. There is no digestion at all. So the total amount of undigested food leaving the large intestine is the same amount of undigested food leaving the small intestine. So the answer it should be something like this. Okay, so whatever you draw over here, it should be the same bar of the same height. Okay, so just shade it very clearly using a pencil. So this should be the correct answer. Okay, just shade it very, very carefully. Okay. Oh. Okay, so this should be the correct answer for this part. Okay, for large intestine. that should look fine. Okay, state the function of large intestine. Okay, this one is a really straightforward given it's a textbook answer. So this is what is being written in textbook. Water is absorbed from the undigested food in the large intestine. So we will use the word undigested food, we will not use waste. Do you really need to include mineral salts? Don't really need. Water is good enough. Okay, but there's something that's missing. Okay, into the bloodstream. Into the bloodstream. So let me just write it down. Okay, so where can you find this? P4 textbook, page 33. Okay, this is one of the yellow box over here. So this should be the answer. Absorb water. Okay, absorb water from undigested food into the bloodstream. Pretty straightforward. So now we have part C. Let me move this up. Okay, part C here. Okay, part C, based on the graph above, what can you conclude about the amount of food digested in the stomach as compared to small intestine? Okay, so in this case, what can you say about the amount of food digested in the stomach as compared to small intestine? So they are basically asking you, right, the amount of food digested in the stomach as compared to small intestine, is it going to be more, less, or the same? So this is the main focus. Is it going to be more food digested in the stomach, less food digested in the stomach, or the same amount of digested food in the stomach? How do you compare? Okay, you go back to this. Okay, so basically the amount of undigested food leaving the gullet will be the amount of undigested food entering the stomach. Okay, leaving the gullet will be the amount of undigested food entering the stomach, right? So you can draw a bar over here. So whatever that is dropped, right, okay, it represents a drop in the amount of undigested food. So whatever that is represented over here, it represents digestion, or it represents your digested food. Okay, so this is the arrow that we are looking at, the red color arrow. So now if I were to draw this apart, I put it here. Okay, so whatever drop in the amount of undigested food entering and leaving the small intestine will represent the amount of digestion. So this represents the amount of digestion. Okay, this is digestion in the small intestine. Okay, digestion in the small intestine. So this will represent the amount of digested food. So this is represented by over here. So can you take a look? Which one got a longer arrow? Small intestine got a longer arrow. It means that there is more food being digested in the small intestine. Okay, so that means there must be less in the stomach, more in the small intestine. So based on this, looking at these two graphs, this is what we can conclude. So the skills here is really looking at the drop. How much is the drop? So this drop, right, represent digestion, or the amount of food that's being digested in the stomach. This drop represent the amount of food that is being digested in the small intestine. Okay, so now we go back to this. There's actually a few answers. Okay, the most easiest way is to use back this. Okay, the amount of food digested in the stomach, just change this to is less than small intestine. Okay, so this is actually how you could do it in the first answer. So just copy. Okay, so the amount of food digested in the stomach is less than the amount of food than the amount of food. Okay, than the amount of food. Okay, I think there's some missing word. Than the amount of food digested in the small intestine. Both are fine. Or you want to write then the small intestine, I think is good enough. Okay? It's quite understandable that you are writing about the amount of food digested in the stomach. Okay, so there's another ways. There's a few ways to can write it. Okay, so answer number 2, you can either talk about less food is digested in the stomach than in the small intestine. Good enough. Okay, a small amount of food is digested in the stomach as compared to small intestine. All these are fine. Okay, but in this case, right, the schools recommend that you do not write this. Okay, the stomach digest less food than the small intestine, because we are actually talking about the food that's digested in the stomach, which is done by the digestive juice. Okay, so in this case, I think the schools probably did not want to see that the organ is doing the job, which is, yes, the organ is doing, but it's actually done by the digestive juice. So this, in this case, right, it makes it a little bit more specific. Okay, so that's why they recommended do not write the stomach digest less food. It should be the amount of food digested in the stomach. So this should be the phrase that it should be used. Okay, this should be the correct phrase, which reflect a high degree of accuracy when you're talking about the concluding statement in this question. Okay, because they are talking about the amount of food digested in the stomach, okay, as compared to the amount of food digested in the small intestine. Okay, so in this case, right, if you take a look, actually this graph is more or less represented here, this part over here. Okay, so when the amount of undigested food entering the stomach, which is from the gullet, okay, so this is the drop down line that I draw over here. This represents digested food, or the amount of undigested food. So when the amount of undigested food leaving, right, entering the stomach, right, this is something that you can use as a basis of comparison. So you just drop down. Okay, so this will represent digested food. Okay, so you can see by drawing arrow, right, you can see straight away that small intestine will digest the amount of food digested in the small intestine is way more than the stomach. So this is actually how you compare. You draw the bar, then you draw the line accordingly. Then you can, from there you can either get the idea of more, less, or even the same. Okay, so now we go on to question number 30. Okay, question number 30 is kind of like very similar to PSLE 2023 question number 30 question. Okay, which they talk about the person that is running okay, and jogging. Then what is the amount of blood transported per minute to the different parts of body? But in this case, they are not talking about muscle anymore. They are talking about lungs and small intestine. So these are very different. They are very different organs. Okay, so explain why there is an increase in the amount of blood transported to the lungs during jogging. So over here, during jogging, there is more blood transported to the lungs, and there is less blood transported to the small intestine. So they're asking you why there is more. So you focus on this part. The main explanation is focused on this part. So typically, most of the students, if they have done enough practice, they will say the more oxygen-rich blood transported is transported to the lungs so that they can release more energy. But this is actually wrong. This is actually wrong, because over here they are talking about your lungs, okay, or this your classic circulatory diagram, right? The heart and the body. If today this question is talking about legs, right, then you can talk about more energy, more oxygen-rich blood transported to the body to release more energy. Yes, that's correct. But this question is not talking about the legs. Okay, it's talking about the lung. So over here, why there is more blood going to the lungs? More blood. Okay, more blood going to the lung, so that the oxygen, right, that enters into your lungs, right, they can be absorbed by the more blood that is flowing through there. Then it can transport more to the rest of the body. You can just stop there. At the same time, when there is more blood that's coming out from the body to the lungs, right, they will also carry more oxygen, more carbon dioxide rich blood. Okay, not oxygen, more carbon dioxide rich blood that can be removed, okay, by the body. Okay, if you have more blood going to the lungs, then more oxygen can be removed. Okay, so in this case, right, there's actually two ways to answer this. Okay, so the first point, when jogging, more blood is transported to the lungs, so more oxygen can be absorbed into the blood and transported to all parts of the body. So this one part. So the first part is really talking about the oxygen. The second part is really talking about the carbon dioxide. This is the second focus. So carbon dioxide produced by the body is transported away by the blood more quickly or faster to the lungs for removal. Okay, because you have more flowing into the lung and away from the lungs as well. Okay, so there's another way to write this. Okay, so in this case, during jogging, so we focus on this part. During jogging, a greater amount of blood is transported to the lungs per minute. So can you see that I'm using the exact phrase over here? This is one way that you can do it. You copy the exact header from the table. Okay, so this then your explanation really comes from here. This is your explain part. Okay, explain. Okay, this allow more oxygen to be absorbed into the bloodstream and transported to all parts of the body. So the key idea is more oxygen and more carbon dioxide rich blood can be transported away from the body to the lungs for removal. Since you have more blood flowing towards the lungs, right, you can actually remove the carbon dioxide rich blood faster, or you can actually remove the carbon dioxide away from your body much faster that's carried by the blood in this case. So the idea is really talking about the oxygen and the carbon dioxide. Don't really need to talk about energy, or rather, if you only talk about energy, right, then straight away it is a straight up wrong. Okay, so this is one way that it could be a wrong answer. Okay, so jogging needs more energy. Yes, I know jogging needs more energy because it's a more intensive activity. So the heart pump faster to transport more oxygen-rich blood and digestive food to all parts of the legs muscle to release more energy. Straight away, this is the wrong answer because you don't answer the question. Because the question, right, is not talking about the heart. Okay, it's not talking about the legs muscle, or it's not talking about the other parts of the body. So in this case, right, this is really about the oxygen being taken in much faster because there is more blood flowing through there, and the carbon dioxide being removed much faster. So don't really need to talk about more energy. If you want to include it, it will be take it as a supporting information, but it's not the main part of your question, main part of the answer. So sorry, okay, it's not your main part of the answer. Okay, think about the function of lungs. Okay, the function of lungs is to take in oxygen to be absorbed by the blood and remove carbon dioxide from the body. So this is the key part. So that's why the answers, right, we link back to oxygen and carbon dioxide. We don't really need to talk about releasing more energy part. Okay, but if today this is leg muscle, okay, leg muscle, just like your PSLE question, then you need to talk about more oxygen rich blood. The heart will pump faster to transport the more oxygen rich blood faster, or more oxygen rich blood to the legs so that they can release more energy in this case. So in this case, this is not really about the leg question, it's really about the lung. So take a look at the body part, you think about the function. Then the function, you work it out from your own explanation. Okay, using the information, explain how jogging after a meal affect the absorption of digested food in the small intestine. How and explain. So how is going to affect absorption? Is the absorption going to be faster, slower, or the same? Or sometimes some of you may say less absorption, more absorption, or the same amount of absorption. So you take a look at this. What is the choice over here? Is it going to be more, less, or same? Okay, the main idea is that you look at this part. Okay, you realize there's less blood going to the small intestine. If there's less blood going to the small intestine, there will be less absorption of the digested food. So it should be less. Okay, less. So how do you make the choice? Okay, so you can copy this part. You put in less. Okay, digested food. Less digested food is absorbed into the bloodstream. Okay, then the evidence actually is from the table. So you can see that I'm using whatever I have on the table. So I only come out with the word less. Less amount of blood is transported per minute to the small intestine. I use this part. Okay, over here, number 1. Okay, then number 2, transported to the small intestine. Okay, in this case, I only come out with the word less because I compare it between these two set of number. So then I use back the function of small intestine. So the small intestine absorb less digested food into the bloodstream. So actually, the choice and the reasoning is repeat, but it's to reinforce your choice in this case, because I'm using the function of small intestine to actually explain this part. Okay, or the more straightforward one will be when jogging, less blood will be transported to the small intestine, so less digested food will be absorbed into the blood in the small intestine. That will be fine enough. Okay, on this part. So to put it in this sense, maybe I can draw you a small intestine. So maybe this is a small intestine. Okay, so this is a tubing. So we have digested food that's kind of floating around. Okay, this is just a representation. Okay, so you have blood. Okay, blood over here. Then these are your walls. So what happened is that the digested food will be absorbed into the walls of the small intestine into your bloodstream, and then the blood will carry your digested food to all parts of the body to release the energy. So in this case, right, if you got less flowing, then the arrows over here will be much lesser. Okay, therefore you have less absorption, less absorption of digested food into the bloodstream. So this is just a picture to represent how it happened at a small intestine level. So let's move on to the next question, question number 31. So the diagram below shows a single cell organism which live in the pond. So you have part F, which looks like phyllis, cytoplasm, nucleus, cell wall, cell membrane, chloroplast. The organism can make its own food. Which part of the cell enable to make its own food? So that means they already more or less give you the helping words over there. You are supposed to choose one word out of all these words to put it into here, and which cell part can allow the organism to make its own food? Chloroplast. Okay, this is straight up chloroplast. Chloroplast trap light and enable the organism to carry out photosynthesis, and which make food. Okay, so when part F of the organism is removed, so basically the phyllis kind of the phyllis looking thing, then you realize that the organism can regrow the phyllis. Okay, after some time. Which part of the cell contains genetic information that enable it to regrow its missing part? So this is a very important activity, okay, that can be only done by the most important part of the cell. Okay, in this case, it must be the nucleus, because the nucleus will control all activity in the cell. If there's a part to be repaired, okay, because it is damaged, the nucleus will do this job. It will have the genetic information, okay, in the nucleus that it will allow some other parts to do the job so that they can build this part, okay, so that the organism can still survive. Okay, so this one, nucleus. Okay, straight up nucleus is the answer. Okay, part C is a very tricky question. It's a very tricky one. Okay, so the scientists conduct an experiment to find out how quickly part F can regrow when the organism is kept at different temperature. So he removed part F completely from each organism and measure the time taken for part F to regrow its back to its original length. And this is the temperature that has been given, and you realize that this is the time taken for part F to grow back to its original length. They ask you this: describe how the rate of regrowth of part F changes with temperature. The temperature will be your change variable that the person is taking is changing, while your time taken for part F to regrow, okay, is actually your measure variable. Is an indirect measurement of regrowth, okay, how fast part F regrow. So take a look at this part. So the temperature is always increasing from 10 to 30, so we evaluate this part very carefully. So 150 to 100, so it went down, right? So it went down, then it further went down to 50. Okay, so it went down further 50. So do you realize that this part over here, the trend actually changes? So this part over here actually started to increase. This part also here also started to increase. So when did the change, okay, in the rate of regrowth happen? It happens at 20 degrees. Okay, at 20 degrees. So if I were to highlight them into two different colors, I'll do it in this way. Okay, I'll do it in this way. So the blue color, the red color over here, 10 to 20. Okay, then 150 to 50. Okay, so maybe I'll draw one line across it. I'll draw one line across it, so it's much more obvious. So in this part, right, do you realize that when the temperature increases, okay, the time taken for them to regrow actually increases. Decreases. The time taken for them to regrow back actually decreases. So it takes a shorter time to regrow. Shorter time to regrow. Okay, so if you compare the rate, is it regrowing faster or slower? If you take a shorter time to do to regrow this part to its same original length, right, you're actually doing it faster. Okay, so in this part, right, if you take less time to do the same thing, you are actually doing it faster. the speed is faster. So in this case, when you read this number, you have to read this carefully. The number is decreasing or the time is decreasing. It means that the rate of regrowth is faster. Okay, so the next portion is actually this part. Okay, let me just highlight in blue color. This part over here. Okay, maybe the black color is pretty confusing. So let me remove that away. So 50, 62, 80. 50, 62, 80, it start to go up. Okay, the time taken started to increase. Okay, so can you see that at 20 is the changing point? Okay, so in this part, the temperature it increases further. The time taken actually increases. So this part over here take a longer time to regrow. So it is happening. The rate of regrowth is actually happening slower. Okay, 10 to 20 is faster. Okay. Then in this case, if it's happened faster, right? That means the rate of regrowth actually increases. Okay, increases. So can you see that this part is very tricky? Increases. If you want to write it in this way, it will be increases. Can you see that the time decrease, right? But the rate of regrowth increase. So it's totally opposite. If the time goes down, that means the regrowth is happening faster. The rate of regrowth actually increases. Okay, so then the next portion is this. Okay, so this part is a very tricky question. Okay, so you cannot just base on the data and then you answer it accordingly. You have to change. Okay, based on what they have given to you. Okay, so if it's 20 to 30, it's happening slower. So if the rate of regrowth is lower, that means it's starting to decrease. The rate of regrowth is decreased. That's why it took a longer time. The time actually increases. Okay, decreases. Okay, so actually this part over here is really asking you for a relationship, but it's 2 marks. So it's a 2 marks relationship question. Okay, very tricky. So how do you answer this part? The first part. Okay, the first point is as the temperature increases. So as the temperature increases from 10 to 20, the rate of regrowth of part F increases. Okay, which is I'm trying to say over here. Or you can say part F regrow faster. Both are fine. Okay. Okay. Or another way to answer this. This is the first point. Okay, then the second point is this. Since it's a 2 mark relationship question, right? Then the second point is this. Okay, second point is this part. Okay. So as the temperature increases from 20 to 30, the rate of regrowth of part F decreases. So part F regrows slower. Okay. So notice this number 20 actually repeated twice. This number 20 actually repeated twice. So some students, when they are not careful, they will just say that it's 25 to 30. Okay, then this part straight away wrong. Because it's not 25 to 30. The increase in the time taken, right, actually started from 20 onward. So that's why you can say that 50 to 62 is an increase. 62 to 80 is also another increase. So we'll take it as this whole part is an increase. So in order to say when did the increase happen or when did the time started to increase, right, you have to look at 20, not at 25. So this is the part that really a lot of people, they will write 10 to 20, 25 to 30. Okay? Then it will become wrong. Okay, so what not to write? What not to write is this. This is the wrong answer. Okay, as the temperature increases for 10 to 20, the rate of regrowth actually decreases. Okay, because how come they have decreases? Because they use the time over here. They see the time decreasing, then they thought the rate of regrowth is decreasing. You have to change your thinking. The time decrease actually means regrowth increase. The rate of regrowth actually increase because it becomes faster, just like what I've stated over this part. So this is a very tricky question. So if you write it in this way, straight away wrong, 0. Okay, so there's another way to write it. Okay, some people they prefer to use this. Okay, then they talk about the rate of regrowth. Okay, but this is a longer answer, but it is accepted if you still want to use the table. Okay, but this one is more preferred because this one is direct, straightforward. You can just use whatever term that they give it to you directly in the question. Okay, so this is another one. Okay, So the first point, as temperature increases from 10 to 20, the time taken for part F to grow back to its original length decreases. So it becomes shorter, right? It means it grows faster. Okay. So the second mark to this relationship question, temperature increases from 20 to 30, the time taken for part F to grow back to its original length increases, means it will grow slower. So basically, I'm just repeating this part over here, but I put it nicely in terms of sentences and words. So okay, going through the question 32. So the diagram below shows the fruits of P and Q dispersing their seed. So this is over here. This is P. So this is the seed of P. This is fruit of Q. This is the seed of Q as well. So state the common methods of seed dispersal by both fruits. So what is common method? Okay, so can you see that this over here, this is evidence of a seed pod. Okay, this is evidence of a seed pod. So over here, the common method, that means you must state something that both of them have in common. Okay, they are both by splitting. Okay, they are dispersed by splitting. So in this case, some of you may think that this is dispersed by wind. Yes, this is actually dispersed by wind. Though some of the seeds, they may use more than one method to disperse their seeds. So this is a combination of both splitting and wind. Okay, it's an addition. Okay, just like for example, African tulip. Okay, they disperse both by splitting and wind. Okay, for fruit P, right, this is mainly dispersed by splitting, because over here this is definitely the seed pod is splitting up, and then the seed is being ejected in all direction. So in this case, right, this seeds over here actually looks something like this. Okay, which is having a hair-like structures. Okay, hair-like structures, where they can be carried by the wind very easily in all direction, and then from there they can be dispersed by the wind. Okay, so in this case, these are not wing-like structures. These are definitely not wing-like structures. These are hair-like structures. They can stay in the air for a very long time. Okay, so over here, based on the observation, explain why the seeds of plant Q can be dispersed further than the seeds of P. So what does the seed of Q have but P don't have that allow it to be dispersed further away from their parent plant? So these are the hair-like structures. As mentioned over here, the seeds of Q have soft hair or hair-like structures which help them to stay longer in the air, to be carried further away by the parent plant, to be carried further away from the parent plant by wind. Okay, but P don't have. Okay, that's why it will be nearer. Okay, as compared to Q. Okay, so do not accept what cannot be accepted if you tell me like wing-like structure, because over here you don't really see wing-like structure. Fruit seeds with wing-like structure, it should look something like this. Okay, so this will be the wing-like structures. Then you can say they have wing-like structures. They can stay, which help them to stay longer in the air, to be carried further away from the parent plant by wind. But you don't see that. Okay, so you cannot say these are wing-like structures. This in this case, the more appropriate one will be your hair-like structures or soft hair. Okay, so let's move on to P. So the diagram below show plant P. Then you got three areas. Y and Y, X, and Z, and you can see that the X is directly under the parent plant, while Z is the furthest away from the parent plant. Okay, so X is the nearest, so Y is somewhere in between. Okay, so over here, area X, which is directly under parent plant, usually moist, warm, and dark. Okay, observe that a few seeds from the plant fell into area X. So can the seeds in X germinate? Can they germinate? Okay, first of all, you need to know that for them to germinate, they need three things: water, oxygen, and warm. Okay, warm. In this case, some of you may say that it is a suitable temperature for the seeds to germinate. Okay, so in this case, right, the questions already mentioned moist, which is water, warm, which is this part. Oxygen is always around. They will always have access to oxygen as long as they are exposed to the surrounding air. So in this case, will they be able to germinate? Yes, they can germinate. Okay, they can germinate. Okay, they could get water, oxygen, and warm for germination, or you can write it in this way. Okay, the seeds in area X could germinate as there are water, oxygen, and the suitable temperature. So in this case, suitable temperature will refer to the word warm. So how about that? Okay, with or without light, the seeds can germinate. This is one key concept that you need to know. So the second point is really really that while it is dark, light is not needed for germination. Okay. When does the seedlings need light? It's only when they have leaf. Okay. The seeds itself do not need light because they do not have leaf yet. Okay. So they cannot make food yet. So only when they have developed their first leaf, then they will need that light for germination. Of course, if your seedling is grow under here, it will not grow well. It will eventually probably die off because the plant pea will block most of the light. Okay, block most of the light from those seedlings that grow under X, and then grow seeds that grow under area X will eventually die off. Okay, part 2. The same number of seeds germinated in area Y and Z. After a few weeks, Kevin observed that the young plant in area Z grew better than those in area Y. So this one over here, okay, grow better. Okay, then this one must be grow poorer. Okay, so in this case, do you realize that area Y is nearer? Okay, while area Z is further. If you are comparing just between Z and Y. Okay, Z is further away from the parent plant, Y is nearer. So Z grow better is because there is really less overcrowding and less competition. So first part, how do you answer this part? You have to quote your evidence first. You look at what you compare between the area between Y and Z, okay, using the distance away from the parent plant. So first up, you can say the young plant in area Z is further away from the parent plant. So this is the key idea behind. So because of the distance is being further away, there will be less overcrowding and competition. So this is the time where you can refer back to your textbook, and over here, let me just put it. Okay, so this part over here is the key part in your textbook, which some of you might forget about it. Okay, so let me just zoom it up. So in this page called seed dispersal, right, you always have this part over here that talks about after fertilization, plant will need to ensure that their seeds are scattered far away from them as possible. So that's the idea of dispersal. This reduces overcrowding and competition between parent plant and young plant for a few things like mineral salts, water, and space. So these are the few things that you need to take note. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So these are the 4 common resources that you probably need to write them in. Okay, sunlight, water, space, and mineral salts. Okay, some schools may accept the word nutrients as a replacement for mineral salts. So how do you write the reasoning part? Okay, let me just zoom in this part. The reasoning part is really there will be less overcrowding and competition for sunlight, water, space, mineral salts between young plant in area Z and the parent plant. So mineral salts, you can also replace it as nutrients if you want. Okay, because some schools still accept nutrients in replacement of mineral salts. Okay, what cannot be accepted if you talk about competition for air or oxygen or food? Okay, because in this case, right, they don't compete for food because why? They can make their own food. Okay, they compete for light. Okay, is when they get less light, then they will make less food. Okay, they do not compete for air and oxygen. Is because air and oxygen is always in their surrounding. They can always take it, even though they grow very, very close to each other. Okay, even though the plants they may grow very, very close to each other, they still don't compete because air is always in the surrounding. Okay, they can just take it through their stomata. Okay, so in this case, okay, penguins are birds. They swim in sea to hunt for food. They need to get out of the water to breathe before entering the water again. Okay, so basically they're asking you give a reason why the penguin cannot breathe underwater. Okay, for you to be able to breathe underwater, you need to have this thing called gills. Okay, that means the birds don't have gills. Who have gills, or which group of animal have gills? Only fish. Fish will have gills. Okay, for them to be able to take in dissolved oxygen in the water. Okay, so in this case, right, you can just briefly say that the birds actually have lungs. Okay, they have lungs, so that's why they have to come out of the water to be able to breathe. Okay, so the answers could be something like this. Okay, birds breathe through their lungs. They do not have gills to breathe in dissolved oxygen underwater. So some schools may want to see this called dissolved oxygen. So if you want, you can add it in to substantiate your answers. Okay, explain how penguin's body shape and white belly, okay, allow it to get food more easily. So this is the idea on adaptations. in most cases, right, adaptations, you have to think about this few things. But in this case, they already tell you that I want to get food more easily. I want to find food more easily. Okay, how does it do it? Okay, so basically, how does this adaptations help them to find food more easily? Okay, so they already pinpoint that it is this, so you don't have to think about this, don't have to think about this, don't have to think about this. So straight away obtain food. So the body shape. Okay, so you can think about it. The body shape, right, in this case, right, it is more or less very streamlined. Okay, it looks something like this. Okay, streamlined, so the water, it can cut through water easily, or they can reduce water resistance. So in this case, they can swim faster. Okay, so swim faster to do what? Swim faster, how does it get food more easily? So that they can catch their prey more easily. So the main idea is streamline body shape, reduce water resistance. Okay, once you reduce water resistance, swim faster, catch prey more easily. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so these are the 4 key ideas for a streamlined body shape. So white belly. So how does white belly help them to get food more easily? So you can think about maybe the idea of camouflaging. So if they have white belly, right, they can camouflage themselves against the bright skies above. So over here, this is white, right? Okay, so what happened is that the fish, right, below, maybe, okay, they will look at it at here, right, they will think that this is the sky. They will think that the belly is sky, and then they think that the penguin is not there. And then what can the penguin do? Because they are able to blend themselves with the with the surrounding using their white belly, right, then they can catch their prey without the prey noticing them. So this is how you can use it. Okay, the white belly of the penguin blend in with the bright sky above, so in this case reducing the chance of the penguin being spotted by its prey. Okay, therefore swimming below it, therefore the penguin have a higher chance to hunt them down. Okay, so blend in, or you can use you can use camouflage. Both are fine. Okay, so both represent the same idea. Okay, you can say the white belly of the penguin camouflage with the bright sky above, then reduce the chances of penguin being spotted. So of course, this is not foolproof. Okay, some of the fish might have noticed that maybe the white belly is a little bit off from the usual sky, and they might detect that it's a predator, then they might swim away. So that's why we will avoid using the word prevent. We will not say prevent the penguin being spotted. We will make it a little bit more we will use the word reducing instead, rather than prevent, because prevent, it sounds that once you have the white belly, right, the fish, right, will never be able to detect you, which is not the case. The fish will still have a chance to detect you, but it's just that it is lower. So over here, we are trying to use a more cautious language. Okay, over here, okay, cautious language. Okay, so a group of scientists conduct an experiment to find out how about the huddling, okay, behavior demonstrated by penguin during winter. Okay, okay, why they huddle? Okay, basically the other idea is this. So can you see that? Okay, during winter, right, the air will be very cold. Okay, this is cold air. So what will happen to the penguin? The penguin will start to lose heat to the surrounding. Okay, to surrounding. Okay, so over here, because they have a warmer body, so they will lose heat to the surrounding. So then they have this experiment over here. Okay, some identical metal cans were filled in boiling water and arranged as shown below. The temperature of water in can X versus can Y were measured and recorded over a period of time. So as you can see, right, these are boiling water. So what happened? Lose heat to the surrounding, lose heat to the surrounding. Okay, both of them lose heat to the surrounding. But over here, the setup one represent a single penguin that is not huddling. Okay, while setup 2 represent a group of penguin where the middle one is being herded, okay, by a group of penguin at the side. Okay, this is what the setup is trying to show you. Okay, basically this setup 2 is trying to show this situation over here, and then we're going to find out how the temperature of the water is going to be affected. Okay, so over here, let's take a look at the results of the experiment. So the temperature of the can, okay, of X and Y is being shown over here, and you can clearly see that if I were to draw a line, right, over here, at a particular time, okay, at the same time, this is X, okay, this is Y. So can you see that at a particular time, the boiling point, the water at the boiling point, right, for can Y, right, drop by this amount. Okay, but for X, right, it dropped by this amount. Can you see that both are dropping, but one of them is dropping less, the other one is dropping more. For can Y is dropping less, okay, it decreased less. Okay, for can X it decreased more. Okay, so we are comparing the rate of temperature decrease, okay, between X and Y, and this one is the one that is that shows setup 2, okay, which is over here. Then this is the one that shows setup 1. Okay, this one we can say that this represents single penguins. Single penguin. This one represent herding penguins. Okay, over here. Okay, so we are talking about the middle penguin that is being herded by the groups of penguin around it. So what can you conclude from this experiment? What can you conclude? So this is the first part, Q1. Then how does this behavior apply to the penguin? This is Q2. Okay, so first up, I'm going to talk about the observation first. So the observation, right, is really talking about the graph alone. Okay, the graph, but it's actually not required in the question. Okay, not required. So you don't really need to write. You just need to write this part. This conclusion represents Q1. Okay, what can you conclude? Q2 represent the application part. Okay, so the observation is that the temperature of the water in can Y decrease less or decrease lower, because we are talking about time, so we can say decrease lower or decrease less than that, or than that in can X. So this is the thing that we can talk about. So decrease lower means it lose heat slower. So this observation represents this conclusion. Okay, the water in can Y lose heat slower than the water in can X. Okay, in this case, or you can say lose heat slower to the surrounding than the water in can X. Both are fine, but this is the key portion. Okay, this is the key, lose heat slower. Okay, now you apply it to the penguin scenario. Okay, how does it benefit the penguin, and how does this experiment leads to an application in a real life scenario? So over here, this part over here, right, we are really talking about coping with extreme coping with its physical factor. In this case, this physical factor means extreme temperature, which is the cold air during the winter period. So how can we apply, how can we write the application part? How does this behavior benefit penguin? So we can say when the penguin herded together, okay, they have a smaller surface area exposed to the cooler surrounding air. This causes them to lose heat slower to the surrounding air, which keeps them warm. Okay, losing heat slower is the main idea that we want to bring up. Okay, this is the key portion. Lose heat slower to the surrounding. These represent the penguins. Okay, so in this part, so over here, right, if we were to take a look at this part, right, so when they are being surrounded by the cans, right, they actually have a smaller exposed surface area towards the surrounding air. So in this case, this will cause them to lose heat slower. So in this case, right, this is really why, or at least this is the reason why the water in can Y actually lose heat slower, and this particular reason also applies to the penguin. Because the penguin itself, right, or the groups of penguin itself will have a smaller exposed surface area to the cooler surrounding air around it, which makes them lose heat slower to the surrounding, keep them warmer. Okay, if you don't really want to explain about from the point of view of losing heat slower, you can say slow down heat loss. So this is how we can talk about it in another part of the answer. Or you can talk about this when the penguin herded together, just like in setup 2. So I link it to the experiment. They have a smaller surface area exposed to the cooler surrounding air. These represent these actions, okay, herding together, slows down heat loss. Okay, this is the key part. Slows down heat loss from penguin as a group to the surrounding air, which keeps them warm over here. They maintain their body temperature. So with that, this is for this. So question number 34. Oscar conducted an experiment in a dark room using a setup below. So you have a piece of tracing paper that allows some light to pass through, and you have the gas collected in the measuring cylinder. In this case, right, most likely the gas is going to be oxygen, because there is light reaching the plant, and the plant in this case can photosynthesize and release oxygen gas bubbles. So after 1 hour, he observed that 10 cm cube was collected in the measuring cylinder. So he read the experiment by adding 2 more pieces of tracing paper between the lamp and the water plant. So over here I add one more. I add two more. Over here I add two more. I add two more. Then they ask you, I add two more, would the amount of gas collected in the measuring cylinder be more, less, or equal? So you have to ask yourself, if you add more tracing paper, right, is there going to be more light or less light? So first up, more tracing paper, you have less light reaching the plant, right? Less light reaching the plant. So the rate of photosynthesis, what happened? Rate of photosynthesis will start to decrease. So when the rate of photosynthesis decrease, the oxygen gas bubble will be lesser as well. So there should be less than 10 centimeter cube. So make the choice first. So less than 10 centimeter cube of oxygen gas bubble will be collected in the test tube itself. So what are the evidence? More tracing paper placed, less light. The plants receive less light. You want to talk about when there's more tracing paper, it will block more light, so the plants receive less light. Both are fine. So then the reasoning, what happened? The reasoning, as a result, the rate of photosynthesis decreases, less oxygen is produced by the plant. So this one is a straight up, it is a straight up, right, where you have to link the light, photosynthesis, and oxygen gas bubble, where you have to add a comparative adjective in front. Less light, rate of photosynthesis decrease, less oxygen gas bubble. So this one is a straight up this kind of explanation behind the experiment that's been given. So let's move on to part B. For part B, Oscar conducted another experiment with the same setup to find out if temperature affect the result of the experiment. The result in this case is the oxygen gas bubble. The amount of oxygen gas bubbles. Or indirectly is the rate of photosynthesis. So in this case, the amount of oxygen gas bubble is actually an indirect measurement of the rate of photosynthesis carried out by the plant. So he kept the distance between the lamp and the water plant to be the same. So he kept this distance to be the same. So let me remove this part. He kept this to be the same. Why did he need to do this, and how does doing this ensure a fair test? In this case, right, the new tested variable is this, which is the temperature of the water, or you can say the temperature of surrounding, but usually it should be the water, because the plants would be directly affected by the water because it's being placed inside the water. The previous tested variable is the intensity of light. Whether more light reaching the plant or less light reaching the plant, depending on the thickness of the tracing paper. So over here, right, you're trying to keep the by ensuring the distance to be the same, right? You're actually trying to ensure that the light, right, the intensity of light given up to the plant, right, is the same amount throughout the different temperature. And this is the idea of a fair test, because you only want what? You only want the temperature to affect the rate of photosynthesis. You don't want light you don't want the amount of light given to the plant to be to affect the rate of photosynthesis this time round. So over here, there's 4 possible answers. So this is a very general questions where some schools will test it. So these are the 4 possible ways that you can answer it. So first up, we can talk about keeping the distance between lamp and the water plant the same would help the plant to receive the same amount of light. So you can identify we are actually trying to control this variable. We are trying to control this variable so that they can receive the same amount of light. So some of them, they are more advanced, they may want to link to the measure variable or the results. So they will say to ensure that the amount of light received by the plants remain the same and does not affect the rate of photosynthesis. I think it's quite reasonable. So the last one, or the third one, is to ensure that the amount of light received by the plant does not affect the rate of photosynthesis. That's why it was kept the same. The 2 and 3, answer 2 and 3, they are quite similar. It's just that answer 2 talk about remain the same. Answer 4 is a bit quite different. So you can write it in this way. The results or the rate of photosynthesis is only affected by the temperature and not the amount of light given to the plant. This is another way. They talk about the result is only affected by change variable only and not other variable, which in this case is the amount of light given to the plant. So all these 4 answers, they are all correct. In this case, so let's move on to question number 35. So Russell set out an circuit as shown below. When he closed the switch, the bulb light up brightly. So over here, it means that when he closed the switch, right, electricity is indeed flowing through this part. This is the first situation. When Russell add another battery to the circuit and closed the switch, he observed that the metal bar X move away from metal bar A, so it move in this direction, okay, and touch the iron rod as shown over here, this iron rod, okay. Explain why bar X move towards the iron rod only after Russell add another battery. So the key part is, why only did it move when he add another battery? How come it never moved when he added 2 battery? Okay, only when he add the another battery, which is 3 battery in order, right? In total, right? Then the iron bar move. Does it mean that this part is not attracted? Okay, so let's talk about this in more detail. So you should know that when you add more battery, right, there's more electricity flowing through the wire, and then more electricity is also flowing through the coils around the iron rod. So it makes the iron rod, right, a stronger electromagnet. Okay, and then this might be able to attract the metal bar X. But does that mean that the original, okay, the original one over here, it is not an electromagnet? It is still an electromagnet, but probably this is too weak. Okay, weak, too weak, cannot attract this part. Okay, only when you add the third battery, right, then it becomes strong enough to be able to attract this part and causing the movement as shown. So the idea is, or the concept that we are revising is that as the number of battery used increases, the electromagnet becomes stronger. Okay, so this part is still an electromagnet, but it's a weaker electromagnet. Okay, this is a stronger electromagnet. Okay, so let's go back to this. So the situation is that you can talk about this. Okay, when a battery was added to the circuit, more electricity flow through the wire around the iron coil. Okay, the electricity did not flow through the iron rod. The electricity did not flow through the iron rod. It just flow through the wire around the iron rod. Okay, that causes the iron rod to become magnetized. So the iron rod in this case will become a stronger electromagnet, which was then able to attract bar X. Okay, so what cannot be accepted? What cannot be accepted is that you write it in this manner. Okay, if you write in this manner, it will not be accepted. Okay, so if you say when a battery was added to the circuit, the iron rod become an electromagnet. Okay, this is wrong. This is wrong. Okay, which was then able to attract bar X. Why this is wrong is because you are suggesting that when you use 2 battery, this one did not become an electromagnet. No, when you use 2 battery, it also become an electromagnet, but it is weaker. Okay? It's just that not strong enough to be able to attract bar X. So in this case, right, the idea is you have to use this comparative term, stronger. Okay? When you add one more, it becomes stronger, can attract. Okay? So over here, this part, okay, is a subsequent explanation, is that with or without the battery added, or with or without the additional battery added, right, the iron rod has been magnetized. Okay? With or without the third battery added, it has been magnetized. Okay. Okay. However, when 2 battery was used, it was a weaker electromagnet. It cannot attract iron bar X. So do take note that it's still an electromagnet, but it is weaker. So the writing of your answer need to be careful, or you need to thought it out very carefully. If you write it in this manner, straight away wrong. Okay, so explain how Russell circuit will be able to help prevent the bulb in the circuit from fusing when there's too much battery. So in this case, it seems to suggest that 3 battery is too much. Okay, so what happened when the iron bar move over here? So you take a look. When the iron bar move over here, right, there's a gap. So straight away become open circuit. Open circuit, no electricity. No electricity flow through the bulb. No electricity flow through the bulb. Okay, that's why in this case, it will become it will help to actually cut off the electricity. Okay, because over here 3 battery make the electromagnet stronger, cut off electricity, so no longer able to fuse the bulb. If 3 battery is the one that will cause the bulb to fuse. Okay, so in this case, this is like a mechanism to stop the too much electricity from flowing through the bulb. Okay, so over here, how do you write this part? as your answer, you can talk about this in this way. When too much batteries are added to the circuit, bar X would be attracted to the iron rod and move away from bar A. They move away from bar A, which is this part over here, causing a gap in the circuit. Okay, the circuit would then be open. So this is the key part, stopping too much electric current or electricity from flowing through the bulb. Both are fine, okay, in this case. So Russell replaced bar X with Y. Bar X and Y are made of different material. When he closed the switch, the bulb lit up. Bar Y did not move at all. Did not move. Okay, state 2 property 2 property of bar Y. So it's trying to say that this when I add 3 battery, okay, when I add 3 battery, right, supposedly the iron rod is already a very strong electromagnet. It should be able to attract all kinds of magnetic material to open up the circuit. But somehow when you change to Y, okay, it just remain here. It is not being attracted. So it is not being attracted. It means that number 1, it is a non-magnetic material, cannot be attracted by the electromagnet. Okay, so in this case, right, it is a non-magnetic material, right, but it still must be able to conduct electricity, because the electricity, right, still must be able to flow through here to be able to close the circuit and allow the bulb to light up. In this case, okay, allow the bulb to light up. So in this case, other than non-magnetic material being the one of the property, another one is being a conductor of electricity or electrical conductor, okay, in this case. So with that, for part C, right, it's really about these 2 property. Number 1, electrical conductor, but non-magnetic material. Okay, things for example like your copper. Copper is an excellent electrical conductor, but at the same time, it is a non-magnetic material. If you put a copper bar over here, this is what going to happen. Okay, light bulb will light up when 3 battery is used. Iron rod still become a stronger electromagnet, but it will not attract the copper bar. So over here we have question number 36. So Sam wanted to find out the volume of the pebbles. He was given this item: water, pebbles, and measuring cylinder. So in this case, right, you are measuring the volume, right? You are actually measuring the amount of space, okay, the pebbles can occupy in the physical world. Okay, so describe means step by step what you should do, okay, to be able to find out the volume of the pebbles by only using the given item. So in this case, you should use all the item. You have the beaker, you have the measuring cylinder. Okay, measuring cylinder is a very precise and accurate apparatus to measure volume. Okay, this is a precise and accurate item. So step 1, what should you do? Step 1, obviously you should pour some water into the beaker, into the measuring cylinder, and measure the volume of the water. So maybe you pour until here. Okay, maybe you pour until here. Okay, maybe 30. Okay, so let's say the volume, at first you have the volume of water. The volume of water is at 30 ml. So next step, what should you do? You take the pebbles, you can drop it in over here. Okay, so next step, lower the pebble gently into the measuring cylinder. At this stage, you should make sure you do it as gentle as possible so that the water will not splash out. Okay, so that the water initially that you capture, right, is as accurate as to be at 30 ml. So once you put it right, the water level will start to increase. So the pebbles over here, right, the water level start to increase. Let's say the water level is 40. Okay, so now what do? You measure the volume of the new water level, which is the pebbles and the water. So step 2 represent the volume of water plus pebbles, okay, which is 40 ml. Okay, so last step, what should you do? Okay, last step, you just find the differences. Okay, take number 2 minus number 1. Okay, take number 2 minus number 1, you will get 10 ml. Okay, take this one, 40 ml minus 30 ml, you get 10 ml. 10 ml represent the amount of space that the pebbles occupy, which is in terms of milliliters, which is the unit given to volume. Okay, find the differences between the volume of the pebbles and water, volume of pebbles and water, and the volume of water to get the volume of the pebbles only. So you do notice that I stress the word volume, 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 volume many times in my answer. Okay, do not write this. Okay, do not use amount of water because amount is very vague. Okay, too vague. The meaning can be interpreted very differently. So what do you mean by amount? Amount, do you mean the mass, which is the amount of matter inside in the water, or do you mean the volume, or do you even mean the number? Okay, the amount of water. Okay, so in this way it is too vague. I don't know what you are referring to. That's why we will try as much as best, right? Use this term volume. It is very specific, very clear. You want to find out the amount of space that the pebbles occupy, or the amount of space that the water occupy. No dispute when you use the word volume. So part B. Sam then pour some water and place 4 pebbles into 2 identical measuring cylinders. So I pour 30 and I put the pebbles and somehow it landed 30. Right? So he read the scale on the measuring cylinder, concluded that the volume of the 4 pebbles must be at 30 degrees. 30 centimeter cube, not degrees, 30 centimeter cube. So explain why Sam's conclusion is not correct. So you got to refute this part. That means you got to dispute this, trying to say that it's not correct. So the concept is that this is a solid and it will have a definite shape. It cannot match the shape of the measuring cylinder. So in this case, right, there will always be this part over here. These are all your air spaces. So what does 30 represent? 30 represent a volume of pebbles plus air spaces. Okay, is equal to 30 centimeter cube, 30 ml, or 30 centimeter cube. In this case. Okay, so how do you refute this, or how do you dispute that, saying that no, the volume of the 4 pebbles is not 30? You just have to say it in this way. There were air spaces and gap between the pebbles in the measuring cylinder, which also occupies space. Okay, so 30 centimeter cube, or in this case, represent the pebbles plus the airspace, not the pebbles alone. Okay, so in this case, this will be the full answer in this case. The last statement is to refute this, saying that no, the volume of the 4 pebbles is not 30 because 30 include air plus pebbles. Okay, so next we move up. Explain using the property of matter. Okay, why the volume of water can be measured by reading the scale on the measuring cylinder directly. That means why when you read this, right, straight away you know that you know that it must be 30 ml. Okay, there's no dispute. That means the amount of water, right, in this case, right, it should be 30. Because why? When you pour in the water, it takes up the space. Okay, it takes up the entire space because it takes up the shape of the measuring cylinder with no air gaps between them. Therefore, if it's really at 30, it should be 30. And that is the idea of having no definite shape, which allow it to fit into any container that you pour it into. So whatever reading that you read off will be the volume of the water. So in this case, when we talk about the property of explaining using a property of material, we are trying to say you need to use this. You need to use this property to be able to explain why we can read off at 30. Why it cannot be applied to the pebbles, because the pebbles itself has definite shape. They have a definite shape. And we cannot read off 30 the same way we read off for water. Water we can do it, okay, because no definite shape, take out the shape of the container. Pebbles cannot, okay, because it has a definite shape. It cannot fit into the container. It cannot fit into the measuring cylinder. Cannot fit into the container. Even if you put it in, there will be air spaces. So the idea is the water is a liquid, has no definite shape, and it could take the shape of the measuring cylinder. That's why we could read off the scale, and the reading that we read off the scale will be the volume of the water that we are trying to find. Okay, question number 37. What is temperature? Okay, temperature is measurement of how hot or cold an object is, or you can talk about measurement the degree of hotness of an object. So basically, this is a numbering system. This is a numbering system, okay, where you can use it to tell the hotness of hotness of an object. Okay, what you cannot write, what you cannot accept, what we cannot be accept, right, is that temperature is a measurement of the amount of heat in an object. So in this case, right, straight up example, okay, you have a beaker of water. This is at 50 degrees Celsius, and you have another beaker of water. Okay, this is at very little 90 degrees, okay, 80 degrees Celsius. Does this means that, okay, let's say beaker A and B, does this means that B has more heat? Okay, no, right? Because the amount of heat in this case is both dependent on the temperature as well as the mass of an object. This is the second part. So that's why we cannot say that an object at a higher temperature, it must have more heat. Yeah? Because it also depends on the mass of an object that we're referring to. Okay? The mass does play a part. So in this case, we cannot compare the amount of heat because the temperature is different, the mass is different. So we cannot really say that A got more heat or B got more heat. So in this case, right, the temperature cannot really tell you the amount of heat in this case. It can only tell you how hot or how cold an object is at the very basic level. Okay, so this is one way to answer it. So Fatima placed a heated metal block on a thick glass slab. Okay, so this is heated, so the temperature is very high. Okay, so in this case, the heat will be transferred, okay, to the thick glass slab. So the graph below shows the temperature of the glass at different distance from the heated metal block after 5 minutes. So in this case, right, do you realize E is here? Okay, let me just erase it away. E is here, and D is here. Okay, so what can you say that is that? Do you realize that E is at a higher temperature while D is at a lower temperature? Okay, in this case. So, and if we were to talk about this and compare in comparison with the diagram, right, do you realize this is nearer? And this part over here, it is way further. Okay, so this further is nearer to the heated metal block. Explain why the temperature at D and E are different. Okay, this is a glass. A glass is a poor conductor of heat, so they will transfer heat very, very slowly, okay, to different parts of the glass. And if you were to place an object directly on a thick metal slab, right, the one that is the point that is nearer to the heated metal block, right, they will actually gain more heat or gain heat faster as compared to the one that is further. So E being nearer, they gain heat faster, the temperature must be way higher. D being further, they gain heat slower, the temperature must be way slower. So in this case, right, the concept being tested is that the distance, okay, the nearer the object is to the heat source, the faster it gains heat from the heat source. Okay, the nearer the object is to the heat source, the faster it gains heat from the heat source. Likewise, the further the object is away from the heat source, the slower it gains heat from the heat source. Both statements are true. Okay, so this is the concept that has been is trying to test you. E is nearer, gain heat faster. So evidence, glass is a poor conductor of heat. Reasoning, okay, there's many ways you can write it. Okay, first is to compare about the distance. Next, talk about the gain heat, lose heat part. Okay, gain heat faster or gain heat slower part, depending on whether you are talking about D or E. Okay, it's easier to talk about E because it's usually is the one at the higher temperature, so we can link it to gain heat faster or gain more heat. So this is one way that you can write it. Part E was closer to the heated metal block, so part E will gain more heat or gain heat faster. Both are fine. Okay, as compared to D. Or there's another way you can write it. You can talk about part E was closer to the heated metal block. Heat was transferred or conducted to part E faster than to part D. Okay, so these are the correct terms that we talk about when we are talking about heat transfer, heat conduction. Okay, so this is one way to answer part 1. So part 2, okay, the thick glass slab crack after a while. Okay, they crack and explain why. How come they can crack? Okay, so do you realize if part A is nearer, they will gain heat faster? So if they gain heat faster, they will expand faster, right? And glass being a very brittle material, right? If there is uneven expansion or they gain heat and expand very differently, right? This will result in it being cracked. Okay, and this usually only happens to brittle material like glass. Okay, so brittle material like glass. Okay, if we are talking today, we will put a heated metal block onto a material like metal. Okay, even though they may gain heat very differently, okay, but it is highly likely that it will not crack. Okay, so it only happens to brittle material like glass. Then you will observe this kind of cracking due to the uneven expansion between the between the materials they themselves. Okay, so what is one way to answer it? So the point one, right, is the part that you have to talk about gain heat faster, expand faster. So this is one way that you can talk about it. Okay, so let me put it this way. So you can talk about the top layer of the glass, gain heat faster from the heated metal block, and expand more or faster than the bottom layer. So we are really talking about this part, top and bottom. Okay, so top is nearer, right, to the heated metal block. They gain heat faster, expand faster than the bottom layer. Okay, or we can even talk about part E and part D. Okay, because when they say the thick glass crack, right, they didn't really refer to which is it cracking in this way or is it cracking in this way? Okay, is it horizontal or is it vertical? So it is quite hard to tell, but most likely it should be cracked in this way. But in this case, right, since the question talk about part E and part D, right, which we already concluded that there's differences in heat gain, right, we can actually use that to explain. So this part, right, we can even say about part E gain heat faster from the heated metal block, expand more and faster than D. Okay, so either way will be fine. Or that means point one can be either the top, you can talk about the top versus bottom, or part E versus part D. Okay, then what happened? Thus, there was uneven expansion in the glass cracked. Okay, good enough. Or you can talk about the rate of expansion is different. Okay, so therefore the glass cracked. Okay, so in this case, okay, question number 38. Okay, and wanted to investigate how the length of P will be affected by the mass of the load hung on it. Okay, she set out an experiment over here. So originally I would have guessed that the spring, right, it looks something like this. Okay, it should be way shorter. So when you hung a mass on it, it start to get pulled down. The spring P gets stretched over here. Then they ask you the purpose of this pin. Why need to have this pin? So over here, right, originally the pin will probably be around here, right? Okay, so when you stretch, the pin will move down. So basically the pin is to do what? The pin, right, originally is at this location, assuming that, okay, the spring isn't stretched, right? It allowed you to move along the ruler, right, so that you can read off the reading over here more accurately. So it's really to increase the accuracy of your reading in this case. So this more or less serve as a pointer or a reference point. Okay, serve as pointer or a reference point for you to read off the reading. Okay, so this is really an idea about how to improve the accuracy of your reading taken during this set of experiment. So with that, right, so the main concept is that act as a pointer. Also, when the spring stretches, the tip of the pin, right, will show exactly where the new length is on the ruler. Over here, without the pin, it's very difficult to for you to judge, because without a pin, then you have to check with this. Then you have to use your eyes to match it along to this length. Then in this case, when you're using it, you might match it to the incorrect length incorrect length marking on the ruler. Then you might read off the reading very wrongly, and this will affect the accuracy. So in this case, okay, so the idea is really to help to obtain a more accurate reading or a measurement of the length of the spring, or you can say the extension of spring. Both are fine. So other than the weight of the spring, right, identify two forces acting on spring P when it is stretched. Okay, this question to me is a little bit weird in terms of their phrasing. So the force acting on P when it is stretched. So notice it's a stretched spring. Okay, so actually the way that this question should be phrased, right, it should be done in this way. Okay, we are actually talking about the force that's acting on the load when it's stretching on P itself. So this is how it can be further improved in terms of the phrasing. Identify two forces, okay, acting on the load when P is stretched. So we are actually checking this part, okay, this part over here, okay. So first up, there will always be your gravitational force that is acting on the load, and this will cause spring P to stretch in this case. So the first up is gravitational force acting on the load. So this will be a downward force. Okay, so let me just put it in this way. Okay, so in this case, the load has a gravitational force acting on it, so it will stretch. Okay, it will stretch the spring. So the spring will always want to do one thing. The spring will always want to return back its original position. So it will always try to stretch it back upwards so that it can return. So this another force is called your elastic spring force. Okay, so there's two forces that is acting on the load itself, or the load that is on spring P that is being stretched. So gravitational force and elastic spring force. Okay, this elastic spring force is exerted by the spring on the load. This elastic spring force is not exerted on the spring. So you need to be careful about this when you are talking about what are the forces exerting on the object. So in this case, right, a special note over here, the spring exerts an elastic spring force on the load, but it does not exert an elastic spring force on itself. So it cannot exert an elastic spring force on the spring, because the spring should be the one that is pulling it back, and it should pull. When it pull back, right, it should exert a force on the load. So what cannot be accepted is that number one, frictional force and magnetic force, because no magnet involved, and we are in this case there is really no frictional force that is acting on the spring on this case, because there is no kind of intended motion. Okay, for this part. So this is wrong. Okay, for this part, this is wrong. This is wrong. Okay, do not accept for this to answer. Okay, so for force, right. For force, right, usually you will use this concept. Okay, force always is about pushing or pulling on an object. So it always acts where? It always acts on the outside of the object, and it has a particular direction. Okay, so force, they always have direction. They always have the amount. So how much force is being pushed. So the next is amount. So these are the two different. These are the two main key points about force. Always acting outside the object, onto the object, and there's a direction, and there can be different amount, and this is way different from energy. Energy, it should be always inside the object. Energy is inside, is to be possessed by the object. So in this case, right, this is one way that you can use, right, to differentiate between the concept of force and energy. Force outside, energy inside. Okay, so over here, let's come back to this. Okay, and increase the mass of the load, measure the length of the spring P. Her result is is shown in the graph. So when you add more load, so you have a spring, right, you add more load, of course the spring will be further stretched downwards. Okay, that's why the line is actually going up. Okay, so based on the graph, what is the extension of spring P when it is 150 gram was hung on it? Okay, when you are doing this question, be careful of this. You have to read this part. Okay, the label on the vertical axis, right, can be either number one, the length of the spring, means this one is the total length. Okay, there can be another way where it starts from 0. That one only measure extension. Okay, that one you have to do a very different calculation in this case. Okay, so later on, okay, the extension, right, will refers to this part. Okay, can you see the extension of spring? The label are different. Okay, so I just show you part D first. The label are different, so the way that you draw the graph is different. For length of the spring, right, you always, when it's length of the spring, right, it cannot start from 0. Cannot start from 0, because you cannot, technically you can, if you have a spring, it must exist as some length. The length cannot be a 0 number. Okay, but when you have when you talk about extension, right, extension always start from 0. Okay, because we are talking about a spring that is not stretched yet, so that's why it will always start from a 0 point, or the origin of the graph. Okay, so now let's go back to this. So 150 gram, okay, is over here. So what you can do, right, the straight up most simple thing that you can do is you draw one line up. Okay, but you have to count very clearly where is 150. So this is 110, 120, 130, 140, 150. 150 is here. 150 is here. So what you can do, use a ruler. If you cannot see very clearly, use a ruler, go and draw. Okay, it hit this point, right? When it hit this point, then they want you to, then it should be here. You see, it's actually not 20, even though it seems very close. It's actually 21 cm. That means when you put 150, right, the total length is 21 cm. So, but they ask you extension. That means how long it actually extends. So in this case, right, to find out extension, okay, you cannot just say 21 cm. 21 is the total. So extension, right? Extension of spring P is equal to total spring at 150 minus original. Okay, so the total is 21 cm. You minus the original. Original means when no load is added. So that means you look at here. Okay, you look at here. Okay, it started off at 6 cm. So 21 minus 6, 15. Okay, 15 cm. The answer is 15 cm. That means the spring, right, extend when you add 150, it extend by 15 cm. This represent 15 cm. Okay, over here. Okay, this is actually how you calculate from the graph. Okay, it's quite easy calculation. Is many people commit the mistakes is that they read the label wrongly. Okay, or they just put as 21. Okay, they never go and do some calculation. So the main answer is 21 minus 6 is equal to 15. Okay, this will be the extension. So what cannot be accepted? Okay, in these questions, a lot of people make a lot of careless mistakes. So they will just write 16. Okay, how come they 16? Because they read it as 5. Because the line over here is indeed very, very close to 5, but it's actually not 5. You look at it very carefully, not 5. Okay, so over here, let me write down the comment. Do not accept 16 cm. They read the original length as 5 instead of 6 cm. So this is a common mistake when you read the number wrongly on the graph. And it's easy. This kind of mistakes can you can commit it very easily. Okay, so in order to don't do this kind of mistakes, you read the graph carefully. If need, you go and do you use a highlighter, go and color, go and highlight, go and match the lines correctly, just like how I do it over here, so that you will not copy any errors. Okay, moving on for part D. And conduct another experiment with P and Q. So we got two springs. They were of the same length. That means at the start they were of the same length. So she hung the spring using two identical blocks. The results are shown over here. So over here, right, we can take it as 10 cm is already being extended. It's extended. Okay, past 10. Okay, extended means it's already being stretched. Okay, so P and Q. So over here, if you take a look at this part, right, if I were to break them down into this, okay, Q looks something like this. Q and P, they all are 10 cm. 10 cm, 10 cm. But what's the main difference between here is that Q got two load, 1 and 2. Okay, P only got 1 load. 2 load, 1 load. Okay, P got 1 load, Q got 2 load. So the idea is that when I put 2 load, total length is 10. When I put 1 load, total length is 10. Total length is 10. So what does this mean? It means that P stretch more easily. It's easily stretched. Okay, when I put 1 load, it already can stretch to the same length as Q. So what happens if I put 2? Then it will stretch even longer, right? So it's P is more easily stretched. So in this case, right, P straight away is a more elastic one. More elastic, so it's more stretchy in this case, or you can say less stiff. Okay, then Q is the one, must be the one that is stiffer. Okay, so in this case, these are the information you can get it out from this diagram alone. So the main idea that you can put it is extension of Q is the same when SP when more mass was hung on it. So Q can stretch less easily, so Q is stiffer, so it's harder to stretch. Now we already know this information is easier for us to put it on the graph. So the graph below shows the relationship between elastic spring force and extension of the spring. So at this is the elastic spring force and this is the extension. Okay, basically they ask you to use a pencil to draw a line to show the relationship between elastic spring force and the extension for Q with respect to P. Okay, so there's either two ways that you can draw it. Okay, there's two ways. Some of you will draw it this way. Okay, some of you will draw it this way. Okay, there's essentially two ways that you can draw it. Okay, which is the correct one? Okay, so in this case, right, to be able to answer this correctly, okay, maybe I just redraw this part so it's make it more easier. Okay, to answer this very correctly, right, what you can do is that after you draw these two lines, right, you draw lines. Okay, how do I do it? At the same extension, this is 10 cm. The extension is 10. The amount of elastic spring force at 10 cm, right, for Q, possible Q is this. For P is this. For Q is this. Okay, so in this case, which is the possible one? Okay, so you can take a look at this, right? Okay, so when you have Q that is stretched to 10 cm, right, you got two loads. That means over here, right, what happened to the elastic spring force for Q? It's actually much greater because they want to you have two loads each and it's stretched at 10 cm, right? That means it's stiffer and you stretch it to the same length as P, right? The elastic spring force for Q is much greater, for P is much smaller. Okay, and this is also based on the idea is that P is less stiff, Q is more stiff. So if I were to put it into this drawing, right? Okay, it's a bit messy. This is Q, this is P. Same thing, 10 cm. You have two loads. Okay, that means, right, that means, right, over here, right, the gravitational force is also much greater. The elastic spring force that is that is acting on the spring that is pulling upwards, exerted by the spring, is also much greater. Okay, that's why I draw it longer. Okay, so this is the elastic spring force. For P, right, it is actually much smaller because over here you got a smaller load acting on it. So the elastic spring force, okay, for P is also much smaller in that sense. Okay, so we can take it that this is actually representing one load. This is actually represent two loads based on here. Okay, so if I were to put back into the graph, right, which one would most likely fit into the scenario? Okay, for this, right, at 10 cm, okay, this for P, right, actually represent one load, okay, then actually Q when it's stretched, when it's extended to 10 cm, right, it should have more elastic spring force because it's way stiffer. So this one should be the correct one. So this kind of represent two loads. Okay, because over here we are reading off in this direction. Okay, then this one cannot be what? Okay? This one cannot be. This one cannot be because this one seems like half load, right? So straight away this is wrong. Okay, this is trying, when you draw the line for Q above P, you are trying to say that this one Q is less stiff. Okay, straight away is wrong already. Okay, because we know that Q is more stiff. So Q is more stiff, the line should be lower than P. Okay, Q is stiffer. Okay, so this is the correct one, correct version. Okay, but of course, if today Q is the one that's less stiff, then this should be the correct answer. Okay, but now today the question is given to us that Q is more stiff. So over here, this should be the correct answer for this part. Maybe I highlight this so that it's much clearer. This is the correct answer. This should be how you draw. Okay, because at the same extension, this one has more load pulling on it, and the elastic spring force is also much greater due to it being stiffer in nature. So so with that, this is done. Okay. Question number 39 is on the topic of water, specifically on evaporation, condensation. So Wei Ming placed two plastic containers A and B of hot fries on the table. After some time, he observed that there were water droplets forming on the underside of the lid of the plastic container. So you take a look at this diagram very carefully. Okay, very carefully, right? So you notice that Okay, these are the water droplets over here. And if you look at it very carefully, it seems trying to tell you that B has less water droplets, while A has more water droplets. Okay, so over here, okay, explain how the water droplets will form. Okay, basically this part, right, is really about your evaporation first, followed by condensation. Okay, so what happened is that the hot French fries, right, it actually kind of that there's water present in there, and then when it is hot, it will start to gain heat and evaporate into your water vapor. So the water inside here, okay, let me draw it here. The water inside here, they will evaporate into your water vapor. Okay, when they gain heat. Okay. Okay, so in this case, they gain heat and evaporate into water vapor. So this water vapor touches this surface, which is way cooler than the warm water vapor. So when it's way cooler than the warm water vapor, right, then it will start to lose heat. They will start to lose heat, and then they will start to condense into your water droplets. Okay, water droplets, and then these water droplets remain on the surface of the lid. Okay, after some time, it will just fall down back into the French fries. Okay, so that will be the part of it. Another way that we can look in this case is that, right, what happened is that the water vapor that's around in the container in the box, right, when it touches the hot French fry, they gain heat from the hot French fries and become warm water vapor. That means the water vapor increase in temperature when they gain heat from the hot French fry. Okay, it's already there. Okay, the water vapor is already there. So what happened to the warm water vapor? Same thing, touches this surface, lose heat, condense, become water droplets again. So there's two ways to explain this. Okay, the first way is to talk about the source of the source of the warm water vapor coming up from the French fries due to the evaporation process. That is the first part. So the second part is really about the water vapor that is around in the container itself, gain heat from the French fries, become way warmer, then it start to condense. Okay, so over here, this part, right, for this type of questions, right, every schools will have their own way of answering, and they have their own answering method. Okay, for Pei Chun public school, right, they always use this idea about ST3P. So as this is more like an acronym to represent certain answering techniques. So for example, you have to, before you talk about this, right, you got to tell me where is the source of the water vapor. So with that's how we identify that it could be from the hot fries, or it could have gained heat from the hot fries. Gain heat from hot fries. From this, right, from this hot fry. So then there must be a temperature difference. The temperature difference is talking about the warm water vapor as well as the cooler lid of the container. So you must identify. Of course, if the lid is as hot as the warm water vapor, no condensation will happen. Okay, because condensation, you need a temperature difference. That means the water vapor must be of a higher temperature than the cooler lid. Okay, it must be of a higher temperature than the cooler lid. Then the heat can start to transfer. Okay, then the warm water vapor can start to lose heat. Okay, in this case, okay, to the cooler lid, and then there can be a change of state called condensation. Okay, so the third point is point of contact, where the water droplets are formed. Where the water droplets are formed is where the warm water vapor will touches that part and started to lose heat. So this is the point of contact. The product is really your lose heat and condense. That means when you're explaining this, you need to have these two words, lose heat, condense. So the last one is about your product, your water droplets alone. Okay, so these are the 5 key ideas. Okay, that's why they call it ST3P. The 3P come from point of contact, process, and product. So with this in mind, right, it's easier for you to write down your answers. Of course, there is another way to do it. Okay, you can also talk about these two main questions when you're writing this. You think about these two. Okay, where is the source of the warm water vapor? Where is it coming from? Is it from the surrounding air? Okay, or is it from the French fries? Or is it from your breath? So these are certain things for you to consider. And where is the cooler surface area? Or it could be, sometimes could be the cooler surrounding air. So for example, if it is just condensed into a mist, right, then it will be a cooler surrounding air. But if there's water droplets forming on a particular surface, right, then it will be a cooler surface area. So these are the two guidelines that you can use, right, to actually determine whether is it a cooler surrounding air or cooler surface area. So over here, there can be two answers for this. So I'm going to go on through the first one. Okay, the first one is really talking about the, okay, this part. Okay, water in the hot fries evaporate and become hot or warm water vapor. So you already, for this part, right, you're actually talking about this part, source of water vapor. Okay, then you got hot water vapor touches the cooler surface, you are talking about the temperature difference. Loose heat condense, you're actually talking about the product, as well as your point of contact is actually your inner surface of the lid. Okay, this part, point of contact is actually this. Okay, so then last part is your tiny water droplets, okay, which is this. So in this case, you got ST3P, okay, in this answer. So this will probably warrant a full marks. Okay, so the source of water vapor is really from the water from the hot French fries evaporate to become water vapor. So another one is really gain heat from the hot French fries, right? Because we take it that why we take it as this, right, is because we when the hot French fries is being cooked in that process, right, all the water would have already been get rid out of the food. So the argument is that since the water have been get rid out of the food, there should not be any water in the French fries. That's why some people, some students or some teachers, they will prefer answer number 2, because they felt that during the frying process, right, all the water would have really get out of from the potato. No more water. So when you're putting the French fries into the box, right, it's really about the water vapor that is already there, gain heat from the hot French fry. So in this part, right, the source of water vapor is very different. Okay, it's really it's actually in the surrounding, but it actually gain heat from the hot French fries to become way warmer. So the source is different. Okay, for the first one is from the hot French fries, from the food itself. Okay, this one is actually from the surrounding air, for number 2. Okay, so how do you answer this? Same idea. Okay, same idea. So the water vapor in the air. Okay, so we talk about the source, right? The water vapor in the air gain heat from the hot French fry, become way warmer or hotter. Okay, so the hot or warm water vapor touches the cooler inner surface of the lid. Loose heat condense to become your tiny water droplets again. So over here on this part, you also have the same thing, ST3P. Okay, so usually, right, for this type of condensation question, right, normally how I like to do is I always like to use this acronym. Okay, so in this part, okay, so we always talk about WLCCT. So it's more like an acronym where we can say we love chew trim. Okay, so how okay, it's really to give a funny sense, right, for this, so it's easier for you to remember. But of course, different people will have different methods. So what is the first W? The first W represent warm water vapor. Okay, this is from where? Okay, where is it from? Okay, you have to quote the source. That's why the first question come in. Okay, so what happened? It actually loses heat to what? To another C, cooler surface area or surrounding air, depending on the question. Then the third part is condenses, okay, into your tiny water droplets. Okay, so with this kind of answering, or this more or less some may call it answering technique, so we use WLCCT. Okay, so I feel that it's easier for you to do it in this way. So when I talk about lose heat to what, condense into what. Okay, so that's why I always like to put the L a little bit in front as compared to the cooler surface area. Because some schools, they tend to prefer to do it this way. They tend to say it touches first, then it start to lose heat and condense. But for me, I feel that it is alright for you to say that it lose heat first to the cooler surface area, then it condenses into tiny water droplets. I take it that this process is happening at the same time. Okay, so both are fine. Okay, so for part B, right, give a reason why there were fewer water droplets formed on the underside of the lid of B as compared to A. So how come, basically they're asking you, how come B got less water droplets? Okay, less water droplets, always think about this, always come from less condensation. Okay, less condensation. So if it have less condensation, right, it probably means that your temperature difference is actually way smaller. Okay, so what I mean by this, right, is that, right, if you take a look at this diagram carefully, right, so for B, right, the lid, right, is actually touching the hot fries. So the temperature, the lid would have already gained heat from the hot French fry and become way warmer, right? Let's put some numbers in. Okay, put some numbers. Maybe it gained heat from the hot French fry. I take it that this is maybe 50 degrees Celsius, the lid. But over here, this is not touching anything. So this probably retain at the room temperature. Maybe I'll take it as 25 degrees Celsius. So then the warm water vapor that is coming out from the hot French fries, right, or it gained heat from hot French fries, let's take it at some numbers, maybe at 80 degrees Celsius. Okay, for both of them. So now we work out the math, okay, as to why there is less condensation. So now let me put it in this part over here. Okay, so let's say we have container B. This one is in contact with hot fries. Okay, then we have container A. Okay, this is room temperature. Okay, let's take it as this is room temperature or just surrounding temperature. Okay, so now I put it as the now I put it this here, the warm water vapor inside. The warm water vapor inside, I'll take it as it is probably at 80 degrees Celsius. 80 degrees Celsius. 80 degrees Celsius. Both are at 80. Okay, so the next up we talk about the lid. Okay, the lid itself, the cooler lid. What will be the temperature? Okay, so at first I say that B actually could have gained heat from French fries, right? So the temperature will be way higher, right? So this is way warmer as compared to A, right? So A will be most likely at room temperature. So now we work out the math. Okay, we talk about the temperature difference between these two. So that means you take 80 minus the 50, you will get temperature difference, right? 80 minus 50, you will get 30 degrees Celsius. So 80 minus 25, you will get about 55 degrees Celsius. Yes, 55. Yes, that's correct. Plus 25. Yes, 55 degrees. So you take a look at this number. 80 minus 25 is equal to 55. You take a look at this number. Which number is larger? This number obviously is larger, right? Larger for A, right? So when there is a larger temperature difference between the warm water vapor inside and the cooler lid, there is more condensation. When the number here is smaller, you will have less condensation. So this part over here, the concept is this. Okay, the smaller the temperature difference between the warm water vapor and the cooler surface, the slower the rate of condensation. Of course, the opposite will be true. The higher the temperature difference between the warm water vapor and the cooler surface area, the faster the rate of evaporation and lead to more water droplets. The slower it is, less water droplets. So now when we go back to this, right, it's really about how to answer this part. So over here, if you have a smaller temperature difference, right, then of course the warm water vapor will lose heat slower, or less water vapor will lose heat. Okay, then of course you have less condensation, less water droplets. So now we take a look at this. Why there were fewer on the lid of container B. So actually this part over here, this is the main focus. You should answer for B. The main focus should be for B. So you take it that you should answer for less water droplets. So your explanation should be less condensation. So the first part, it could be, you could write it in this manner. Okay, the lid of container B gained heat from the hot French fries. Its temperature was higher than the lid of A. So we are talking about the lid, right? Even though it is cooler to the warm water vapor, but B is higher than A. So because of this, less water vapor condensed on the lid of container B, forming fewer water droplets. Good enough. This is a good enough answer. Okay, because it's only 1 mark. Okay, what is another way to answer? Okay, this is actually using this concept over here, and this for answer 2, I feel that is a much better answer as compared to 1. Okay, same thing, the lid of B gained heat from the hot French fries, so its temperature was higher than A. So you talk about the evidence first. Okay, so there was a smaller temperature differences between the warm water vapor and the cooler lid of B. So apply to the context. Apply to the context. Okay, don't just say there is a smaller temperature difference between the warm water vapor and the cooler surface. Okay, in this case, right, make your answer right. Make your answer contextualized to the situation over here. Okay, so for example, we will use things like B or A. Okay, so that your answers will fit into the scenario, fit into the diagram. Okay, and it makes more sense. So the rate of condensation was lower. Good enough for this part. So answer 1 and 2 both are acceptable. Okay, for this is really how you could have answered for this part. Okay, so let's move on to question number 40. Question number 40 is really on energy. Okay, so Anissa filled a pail with water. She hung it above the metal tray. A hole was made at the base of the water for it to drip out. With each drop of water hit the metal tray, you heard a sound. Okay, so over here, so basically they ask you to state the energy change which took place when the water from the pail dripped onto the metal tray. How? Okay, so over here, since the sound is being heard, right, so there must be sound energy. Okay, one of the boxes must be sound energy. So over here, the pail, right, it is way high above the ground, so it must have some form of stored energy in this in this manner, which is called your gravitational potential energy. Okay, so GPE. Okay, in short. So if you want to write potential energy, it's fine. Okay, you don't have to go to the specific term for this. Okay, potential energy is fine. Okay, so let me just highlight in red. Okay, so metal tray, when it hit the metal tray, right, there's actually some form of movement. So when there's movement, it comes with kinetic energy. Kinetic. Then you also heard a sound, right? So sound energy. So kinetic and sound will be the moment when the water hit the tray. Okay, we take it that it is a moment when the water hit the tray. So this part straight up is a 1 mark question. So what is the common mistake? Common mistakes is actually people spell it wrongly. Okay, so usually people spell gravitational wrongly because it is such a long word. Okay, so sometimes it's missing the T or sometimes the A is missing. Kinetic, usually people will spell it correctly, but sometimes they will spell it in this way. Kinetic, okay, then the E is missing, then it becomes the I. So minor spelling errors, I think that you still it is alright, you still can make it out it is kinetic, but if it's possible, just write down the correct words for this. Okay, the hole at the base of the pail was enlarged. Enlarged just means becoming bigger. Okay, you have a bigger hole. Okay, that means over here, right, originally the hole is like this, now you have like this bigger hole. Enlarged, the hole become bigger. So when the hole become bigger, the water droplets that drop down, right, also become bigger. So when the water droplets become bigger, it hits the metal tray, right, it actually would have create a larger sound. Okay, because over here, the water droplets that drop out from these instances, I will have more GPE. This arises due to more mass. Okay, so when you have more GPE, it can convert it to more sound energy. Okay, more sound energy. That's why you heard a larger sound. So basically, they're asking you state the effect of sounds produced. So the choice is really simple: louder sound. Full stop. Okay, the evidence and reasoning, you can talk about it as this way: when the hole was enlarged, the water dripping out of the pail would have a greater mass and possess more GPE. Okay, that can be converted to more sound energy when the water hits the tray. Do you really need to talk about kinetic energy? Don't really need, because they are talking about the sound over here. Okay, but if you put it in, you won't be penalized, but it doesn't add value to your answer. Okay, so the sound energy is more important in this case. Okay, using the same apparatus, that means you cannot make modification. You have to use the same things. So normally, right, when you see this, using the same apparatus, you means you cannot change. Okay, you can think about a few things that you can do. You can move, you can shift, okay, you can relocate things. Okay, and that should be your main idea when you're thinking about this. You relocate items, okay, you shift, you move things. Okay, so over here, so you should start off. Okay, your answer should start off with this over here, and these are the verbs that you should be using. Okay, so suggest one other changes besides changing the size of the hole to increase the loudness of the sound. So you want to make the sound larger. So what should you do? Okay, so you think about this. That's how in the first question, right, they talk about mass because the hole was larger, right? So GPE is affected by both mass and height. Not height, not height of the water, but height above ground. Height of the water dropping that is above ground. Okay, height above ground. So since the question say you cannot talk about the hole, right? That means you cannot talk about the mass anymore. You can talk about the height above ground. Basically, what you can do, you take this pail, you shift it higher, shift it higher. So when it's higher, you will have more GPE. Then when the water is released, you will have converted to more sound energy. Therefore, the sound will be even louder. Okay. So over here, how do you actually write this part? So you can talk about this. Leave the pail higher above the tree. Okay. You cannot just say leave the pail higher. Higher where? Okay, it must be higher above the tree. Okay, I can leave the tray over here, but it might not produce that sound because the sound is only heard when the droplets hit the metal tray. So maybe it hit onto some other part of the grass patch, right? Then it might not produce that sound, okay? And it might not increase the loudness of that sound. So this is why the word tray over here, right, is very important. You need to make reference to the diagram. Okay, so leave the pail above the tray. This would be the main answer. Okay, and why increase GPE stored in the water in the pail so that it can convert to more sound energy, producing a louder sound. Okay, what cannot be accepted? What cannot be? So if you talk about move the pail further away from the tray, okay, if you move the pail further away from the tray, right, it could be interpreted as such. Okay, I move the pail further, okay, correct, further. I could move it left and right further, but it still doesn't explain, it still does not give rise to more GPE in the water. You could have moved it very, very far away, but the amount of GPE is still the same. So this is wrong. It should always be higher, not further. Okay. So what is the next possible answer that people will give that is wrong? Okay. Make the hole even larger. They already tell you that the size you cannot change. You don't talk about the size anymore. So you cannot write make the hole even larger. Okay, you're just repeating what the questions have said earlier. Okay, cannot make the hole larger. So what is the last one? Okay, last one. Place the pail above the tray, but you never mention about the height. Okay, if you take a look at this one, the pail is above the tray. So are you just stating if you never mention the word higher, right, it will not be able to say that it will have more GPE. So that's why this answer cannot be accepted, because the pail is already above. So what is about what you can do to make the sound louder. So you must really mention the word higher. The comparative adjective must be stated in your answer, higher. Okay. So with that, I'm going to move on all the way from first question all the way down, so that you can at this part, right, you can really pause and really look at the answers again if there's a need arise. Okay, so let me move up all the way. Okay, so let this 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, this is a adaptation of question number 20 from PSLE 2017, question number 27. This is not part of the paper. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Okay, now we're going to move on to the open-ended part, which is section B. Okay, let me just zoom it out. 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 'Last question for D. Okay, I've already put the paper in the description below. Feel free to download and then work it out on your own and check back with the video for the solution. With that, thank you very much.